I discovered my sister's secret income, property damage, and exploitation, so I kicked her out and sued for compensation. I don't know how to start this without seeming crappy, but here goes. For 6 years, my sister Jess, 25, has lived with me, a 27-year-old IT professional. It started with me wanting to do the right thing as the older brother and spiraled from there. Context: Jess got pregnant at 19. I won't go into detail, but it wasn't good. She had little assistance, and our mother, who raised us as single parents, wasn't financially or emotionally able to help her. As the elder brother, I offered, "Come stay with me." I didn't think much of it. I had just acquired a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, but it was mine. I was proud of my years-long savings for that house. Like a sturdy base, you know? Jess was meant to stay for a few months to figure out her life. I sometimes assisted with the baby at night and made her feel comfortable. A few months became a year, then 2, then 6. At least Jess wasn't worthless. She generally cleaned her portion of the house and helped with shopping and shared places when her first child became older. She never paid rent. Not once. At first, I didn't want to be that person, so I didn't ask her. When I heard she was a single parent, asking for money felt wrong. Her life became pleasant over time. While living here, she had a second child, don't ask about the dad, and what started as a place to sleep became her life. My nephews, her boys, considered my house their home. I probably kept it going because I felt obligated to her. Jess and I had a difficult childhood. Our mom tried, but we were broke, and I always promised myself I'd improve. I'd help my family in need. Personally, I prefer my nephews. They're good kids despite their loudness and yard mess. About 2 years ago, I met Amy, my wife. Seriously, she's 26 and great. She understood Jess's position from the start and we clicked. Amy hardly mentioned my sister living here for the first 2 years. She occasionally asked, "When do you think Jess will get her own place?" But was patient because she understood it was complex. Amy moved in last year, changing things. I know, moving into a house with another woman and her 2 kids is hard. Jess and Amy were initially courteous, but there was unsaid tension. Amy felt that she couldn't claim the house since Jess had claimed her territory. This is where things went wrong. Gardening has always been Amy's passion. Growing up helping her grandma grow, she often remarked about how peaceful it was. Amy had been wanting to start a project for a year since moving in. We were talking about the house after dinner a few weeks ago, and Amy mentioned that she wanted to tear up part of the front yard and plant a spring garden. She had seen flowers, little shrubs, and a bench for us to sit. I liked the sound. The only thing in our yard is grass and a few forlorn plants. I thought a garden would look better, and Amy was so enthused about it, so I didn't say no. We considered hiring contractors to remove the grass, prepare the soil, and lay out the space. Amy wanted to take a few days off work to supervise and ensure it was done right. I advised her to pursue the strategy because it was sound. In retrospect, I know what I did wrong. I should have told Jess the plan. My house is mine, so I don't have to explain what I do with it. However, Jess has lived here for 6 years and her kids play in that yard often. Even though it's not her legal place, it's been part of her daily routine for so long that I should have warned her. Amy and I had strange schedules, so we scarcely saw Jess that week. She's generally around while I'm at work, and when I get home, the boys are asleep and Jess is relaxing. I didn't think calling attention to the garden was necessary because I thought she wouldn't care. A stupid assumption, looking back. On the scheduled contractor day, Amy took the day off to handle things. I was at work as normal, unaware of what was about to happen. Construction crews arrived early and tore up the front yard. Amy accompanied them to ensure proper execution. Amy said it was fine at first. She said good morning to Jess, who hardly looked at her, and went about her business. Jess then observed what was happening. She supposedly lost it when she witnessed workmen breaking up her kids' daily playgrass. Amy said the ranting started suddenly. Jess stormed out in her pajamas, wanting to know what was going on. She said Amy ruined the yard and took her kids' only play space. Amy tried to tell Jess that she and I had discussed it, but she refused. Amy reported Jess shouting. She screamed at the contractors to halt and told them not to touch anything. Amy said, "Actually, you don't get to make that call. This is our home." Jess replied, "I've lived here for 6 years. You can't rip apart my home either." Things got out of hand then. Our neighbor Karen, in her 40s, heard the ranting and intervened. Karen and Jess are friendly, her kids play with my nephews and they bond over being single moms. Later, Amy told me Karen came over and immediately took Jess's side, questioning what the workers were doing and why Jess didn't know. Amy tried to stay cool, but Karen ignored her. She called the cops. Police, Yes. Thinking about that, I still can't believe it. Karen reported unlicensed laborers messing up the yard to 911. She claimed Amy couldn't change anything because the owner wasn't home. The police arrived quickly, I presume in a quiet neighborhood like ours, they had nothing else to do, and things grew even crazier. Amy tried to explain that she had permission because this is her house and we're married, but the officers told her to go for the night because I wasn't present to confirm. They let her take an overnight bag and then escorted her out of our residence. I was at work and unavailable when I learned about this. Our IT facility's warehouse zone prevents me from carrying my phone during shifts. Not until I checked my phone on break and saw roughly a dozen missed calls from Amy did I realize what had transpired. I felt very stupid. I left work early, got in my car, and drove home for an hour trying to understand what happened. That night, I felt like my brain was short-circuiting at home. Jess was sitting on the couch, calmly scrolling through her phone, as I entered the house. Meanwhile, Amy was absent. My sister acted like she was the victim when my wife was evicted. "Where's Amy?" I asked, trying to speak clearly. Jess innocently looked up. "She left," she remarked as if it were plain. "Police made her do it." Her tone immediately irritated me. Not yet yelling, but near. Why did Jess call the cops on her? What the hell is happening? She then defensively began her story. She claimed she had no option. Amy and the workmen were destroying her kids' play environment without her knowledge, so she acted. She talked about living here for 6 years and how Amy changed everything without appreciating her. "You don't get it," Jess remarked. "This has been my home for years. You can't rip up the yard without my permission." What I heard was unbelievable. After years of supporting my sister, who has lived here rent-free, was acting like she owned my house. "Your home?" I said. "Jessica, this isn't your home. You live here because I let you. I helped you for years, and you call the cops and kick out my wife." Then she played the victim. She cried as she said her kids loved the yard and had nowhere else to play. I loved my nephews, but her response was terrible. "You screamed at Amy," I replied, raising my voice. "You shamed her in front of workers, got the neighbor involved, and called the police. Someone does that?" Jess got up and yelled back, attempting to match my energy. "You and Amy didn't even tell me. I had to find out when strangers were digging up the yard. You don't just get to change everything without talking to me first. I've lived here for 6 years. I have a say in this." I stopped. Her statement was so ridiculous that I paused mid-sentence. "You have a say, Jess? You don't pay rent, you don't own this house, you've been living here because I've been helping you out." She said it, the line that boiled my blood. "I have tenant rights. You can't just do whatever you want anymore." I froze. "What did you just say?" Jess crossed her arms and repeated it, quieter but firmer. "I have tenant rights. I've lived here for 6 years. You can't just kick me out or change things without notice. Legally, I have rights too." I had to leave. I couldn't look at her. Sitting on the porch, I tried to relax. I was angry, not afraid, so my hands shook. Amy called when I was outside. I could tell she was upset while staying with her sister. "I can't believe your sister did that to me," she gasped. "I'm your wife, and the police made me leave our house." Hearing her pain enraged me. "I'll handle it," I assured her. "This is the last straw, Amy. Jess has to go." I went inside later. Still sitting, Jess pretended nothing had happened. I was honest this time. "You must leave," I said. She appeared surprised at me. "What? Kicking me out over a garden?" "No," I answered. "I'm kicking you out because of how you treated Amy. I'm kicking you out because you think you have more of a right to this house than my wife does. This is my home, Jess, and you crossed a line." She cried again, saying I was cruel, that she had nowhere to go, and that I chose Amy before my sister. And maybe I was. But I didn't care then. I wouldn't let her disrespect my wife and behave like she owned the place. I set a deadline. "You have 60 days to find somewhere else. I'm serious. I'll help you pack. I'll help you find a place, but you're moving out." Jess slammed her door as she stormed to her room. I stood there exhausted for a moment. I saw a lawyer the next day about tenant rights. I didn't want to be surprised if Jess fought me. The lawyer claimed Jess may have residence rights because she's lived there so long, but since there's no lease and she's never paid rent, she might be evicted easily. Just give her written notice. Yes, I did that. I printed an official notification and gave it to Jess that night. "You're really doing this?" she asked, crying. "Yes," I answered. "It's time, Jess." Felt awful. Yes, I did. I adore my sister. It wasn't simply the yard anymore. Respect, boundaries, and putting my wife first were key. Amy received my full story via text that night. When she returned home the next morning, I saw how relieved she was to be home, and I knew I had done the right thing. I've initiated official eviction, and I'm not backing down. Maybe this makes me a lousy brother, but I'm done. Any developments will be posted. Update 1. My last post on handing my sister eviction papers was a week ago. Things have risen unexpectedly, but I'm addressing it systematically and obtaining pleasant outcomes. First, Jess's reply surprised me. Instead of accepting reality, she fought back legally. She engaged a cheap consultation lawyer who assured her she had squatters' rights. Her lawyer wrote me a threatening letter alleging she had equal property rights after 6 years of residence. They didn't realize I'd already consulted an eviction-specialized real estate attorney. Jess has fundamental tenant protections, but her situation is weak, my lawyer said. She has never paid rent, and we have no written agreements governing her stay. All paperwork lists me as the sole owner and my wife, Amy, as a legal resident. Better yet, my lawyer said her garden axe helped us. It shows antagonistic behavior toward legitimate property owners. What about Karen, the neighbor who phoned the police? It seems she's generating more difficulty. She wrote on our neighborhood Facebook page that I'm evicting a single mother and her children. She tried to arrange a protest outside our house. My lawyer wrote her a cease and desist letter saying that her activities could be harassment and interference with court procedures, which backfired catastrophically. The most intriguing development was Karen's unexpected police visit. Falsifying police reports of unlicensed buildings might have consequences. She may be charged with making a fraudulent police complaint. Her attitude changed so rapidly afterward. She hasn't spoken in days. Since this began, neighborhood dynamics have changed substantially. Some neighbors initially supported Jess, likely because she had portrayed herself as a suffering single mother for years. After Karen's failed protest and Jess's financial predicament became public, people's views changed. I was surprised to learn that Jess has worked part-time for 2 years while stating she couldn't afford to move out. My lawyer subpoenaed her bank documents for eviction, and she's been saving a lot, but not for moving out. She's been on exotic holidays with friends while telling me she's poor. When Jess played her last card yesterday, things got interesting. Her lawyer made a settlement offer to depart peacefully provided I gave her $10,000 in relocation help. They said she deserved recompense for her long-term investment in the property because she cleaned and maintained the dwelling. Perfect response from my lawyer. He sent a precise estimate of market rate rent for 6 years, utilities she never paid, property tax she never paid, maintenance expenditures I paid alone, and current legal bills. The total exceeded $100,000. In exchange for her prompt departure, he graciously waived these charges. Jess's lawyer suddenly lost interest in financial claims. Through this process, the family's reaction has changed. Many, including our mom, were initially conflicted. Most of them understood my viewpoint after seeing the garden incident police report and Jess's secret savings. Mother contacted Jess to say she was out of line. Jessica didn't expect the family to support me. That was a turning moment. All along, Amy has been really supportive. She's been helping me document everything, and she pointed out to me that the garden incident's security camera footage exposes Jess and Karen's behavior. This helped our legal case immensely. Positively, Amy's garden project is progressing on a different time frame. We recruited new contractors, the old ones didn't want to return, and work will begin when Jess leaves. Amy is working with a landscape designer to improve her plan. Kids are the only thing that bothers me. Jess is using them as emotional leverage because they don't comprehend. My nephew asked me yesterday why we no longer love them, presumably from his mother. Though it breaks my heart, I remember myself that Jess caused this. Although the 60-day notice period continues, my lawyer feels we're in a solid position. Jess's tenant rights claims have backfired. By identifying herself as a renter, she's also acknowledged me as her landlord, giving me additional legal right to evict her. Jess has started packing, but she's being subtle. I think she's finally realizing it, especially since she lost the family's sympathies. Fighting this would be costly and pointless, her lawyer undoubtedly told her. I'll update when things change substantially. I expect Jess to depart early to preserve face or stay until the last minute out of spite given the situation. Either way, we're ready. After seeing how quickly her legal threats failed, I doubt she will go that far. Update 2. Karen's legal issues grew. After the police investigated her bogus report, she faces minor charges. She apologized and asked us to withdraw the allegations, but the prosecutor continued. It appears she's done this with other neighbors. The most satisfying development was from our homeowner's insurance company. They pursued Karen for higher premiums and legal fees after learning about the garden incident and bogus police report. We're using her large payout to fund a better garden project than planned. Jess made one more desperate try 2 weeks before eviction. She tried to claim first possession, claiming half ownership from her 6-year residence. When our lawyer supplied the considerable record of her rent-free status and my constant ownership claim, her new lawyer, the third she's hired, quickly dropped that claim. Family dynamics have flipped in our favor. The cousins told us Jess had been conducting a modest online business from our house for a year, which she never acknowledged while citing financial trouble. She registered her business at our location but never reported the income. The authorities received this information. We hired expert movers and security on moving day to guarantee everything went properly. Jessica tried to stir controversy one final time by claiming she owned some of our stuff. Our lawyer briefed movers simply referenced our itemized inventory and photos from when she initially moved in to establish everything was mine. Her attempt to harm the house before departing sealed her destiny. She thought she was smart by loosening cabinet handles and poking tiny holes in window screens. She didn't understand that our new security system recorded everything. Our lawyer will undoubtedly sue her for damages using this footage. The hardest thing was kids. My nephew wrote a sorrowful note that he would miss his home on moving day. Jess never opened a savings account for her kids' schooling, despite her secret income. Eventually, they'll realize their uncle cared. Amy's garden project is underway. The contractors began work the day after Jess left, and the transformation is stunning. Our modest play area for neighboring kids will be supervised, proving we're not the villains Jess painted us as. The neighborhood's response to the truth is overwhelming. Many neighbors told instances of Jess's manipulation throughout the years. One elderly couple said she borrowed money from them monthly for the kids' medical bills. A lawyer is helping them collect those cash. Karen was finally humiliated when she defended her actions at a neighborhood association meeting. Another neighbor showed her interference in other disagreements. She was expelled from Neighborhood Watch and barred from community leadership. The house is quieter, organized, and ours for the first time. Repainted the walls, fixed Jess's damaged carpets, and put up my dream home office. With a complex watering system and seasonal flower rotation, Amy's garden is becoming a neighborhood attraction. The makeover is so spectacular that a local gardening group wants to include it in their annual tour. Our legal win was greater than expected. In the final court hearing, Jess's illicit commercial activities were highlighted. The judge was harsh on her using our address for business registration and taxes. The judgment upheld our eviction and awarded property damage and legal fees. The judge's closing statements about familial goodwill misuse were pleasing. Community opinion has changed drastically. The conflict originally kept our next-door neighbors away, but they recently organized a cookout and apologized for not addressing Karen's false tale sooner. They had comparable manipulation experiences with Karen and Jess, demonstrating a trend we hadn't understood. The most shocking part is how this experience has strengthened some family relationships and severed harmful ones. Our cousins, who revealed Jess's secret business, visit often. They've helped us document everything for legal purposes and supported Amy's garden initiative. Our mom is at peace with the outcome after initially struggling. She recently informed me that seeing Amy and I handle things with respect and legality taught her that tough love is sometimes needed. She now visits regularly to help Amy with the garden and enjoy our tranquil atmosphere. We received an unexpected letter from Jess's oldest child last week. He wrote to apologize for some of his move-related comments while staying with our aunt for the summer. It was written in his own words without his mother's influence, giving us hope that we may re-establish that relationship even if Jess remains estranged. The restraining orders against Jess and Karen were approved last month, adding security and peace of mind. The judge said our thorough documentation and security footage made it one of the best prepared cases she has seen. Our lawyer's final report had intriguing figures. Nearly $150,000 was spent on rent, utilities, and damages over 6 years. A large percentage of this cash was awarded in the judge's final order, although we doubt we'll see it. But having the judgment on record feels good. I regret condoning Jess's actions for 6 years, but terminating it was right. Sometimes doing the right thing involves being someone else's villain. Amy and I are finally enjoying our home as we should, and our legal protections ensure Jess can never do this again. For comparable situations, document everything, hire a qualified lawyer, and don't let emotional manipulation take over your property rights. The preceding few months were difficult, but perseverance paid off. Our home is finally ours, and justice was more rewarding than I expected. Finally, thanks to the Reddit community. I survived this process thanks to your comments on my earlier writings. You all gave me great legal advice, and your tales helped me feel less alone. Many thanks to those who suggested the security cameras. They were essential evidence. This community's insight and support helped us win justice. Please pardon me as I help Amy with her new butterfly garden section. When you have your own space, you can do incredible things. Evicted by my parents, I secretly bought their house and tripled the rent to rewrite my own destiny. Things began to go downhill, or uphill, depending on your perspective. I worked part-time in a low-paying grocery store at 22 to finish my degree. Tom and Linda, my parents, pressured me like they owned my life. Every day, they pushed me toward their ideal life. They thought they knew best yet didn't know my wishes. I stealthily eat my mom's overcooked meatloaf at dinner on Thursdays. Though it felt like chewing cardboard, I didn't say anything for fear of a sermon on my ungratefulness. Dad abruptly asks, "How's that business degree?" In his usual faux-concerned dad manner. Though preparing, I knew this talk would happen. My stomach fell as my heart raced. Rip off the bandage. I set my fork down, staring at the clump of peas I'd been pushing around my plate like a 5-year-old. About that, I shakily responded. I've contemplated changing majors. Room fell silent. The hallway clock ticked. Then I knew what was coming. Changing majors? My dad nearly gags on food. Only when angry would he glow scarlet. Yeah, I want to switch to computer science, I said, trying to communicate clearly. It felt like a firing squad. Before I finished, my mom answered sarcastically. Jake, thinking never been your strong suit, she joked, smiling tightly. We all knew it wasn't. She often jokes pretending to laugh. Sat there swallowing rage. I wanted to yell at them and tell them they were wrong, but I knew better. There would be more ranting, and I didn't want an argument. Dad continued. His fork shook the plates as it hit the table. Computer science, are you crazy? Business makes money. That foolish hobby is ruining your future. Tried to explain. It's not a pastime, Dad. Like it and think I can do well. You think? He disconnected again. Passion costs nothing, Jake. You're reckless. Think forward instead of doing what you want now. My mom agreed, feeding the fire. No more childhood. Don't play with your future. They didn't care about my wishes. As a project, any deviation from their design meant ruining it. Nobody considered that I might know what was best for me. After dinner, I collapsed on my bed after slamming the door. Like a burden on my chest. Calling Ashley on my phone. She alone understood my condition. How did it go? She asked, knowing the outcome. Like a freaking disaster, I murmured, rubbing my eyes. I told them, and they went berserk. Like I told them I was skipping off to join a circus. She responded by sighing. Jake, defend yourself, your life, not theirs. You owe nothing. Yes, but they're my parents. Not that easy. I get it, she muttered. But Jake, you're 22. No more childhood. Own your life or they'll run it for you. While staring at the ceiling, I realized she was right. I should act like a grown-up. The next morning, I felt dread and resolve as I informed them honestly that they could no longer dominate my life. My pulse raced as I went downstairs and discovered them watching TV in the living room. Mom, Dad, we need to talk, I said shakily but firmly. After my dad muted the TV, everybody looked at me like they expected big news, which it was. Switching to computer science. Dad frowned. You're not. I persisted this time. I chose this as an adult. I hoped they would give me it, but Mom stood up with her arms crossed. If you're an adult, you can support yourself, she said coldly. You have 24 hours to pack and leave. I was riveted, like my brain couldn't comprehend what she said. What? I succeeded? You can't be serious. My dad snaps. Oh, we're serious. You want to decide? Fine. You're doing it alone. I forget my walk back to my room, but I felt betrayed, like they were looking for an excuse to push me out. I was their son, but they treated me like garbage. I called my best friend Mike from my room without trying to talk well. I said, dude, they kicked me out, shaking my hands. I don't know what to do. Mike immediately said, pack your stuff, man. Stay with me. I discovered it while packing my clothing in a duffel bag. My parents threw me away like trash. Despite how bizarre it sounds, I felt relieved. They no longer controlled me. Not sure what that meant. I slept in Mike's house trying to figure out what happened after getting expelled, but it felt like my life had changed. From fighting with my parents about my major to being homeless felt unreal, like someone else was experiencing it. I didn't mind Mike's one-bedroom apartment that smelled like stale pizza and exercise socks because I had a roof and a friend who wouldn't ask me to leave. I couldn't crawl to my parents for help because it was too cramped. Every movement made Mike's old couch rattle where I slept. Every time I finished my homework, my mind would replay what happened. It seemed like my mind wouldn't let me forget I didn't have a home. My savings were draining fast, and I needed to work more. I couldn't balance 2 jobs, school, and life decisions. Ashley recommended we eat lunch at a cheap sandwich cafe near Mike's to relax after she couldn't fix my problem. As I hadn't eaten much since leaving home, I figured going out might help. "How are you doing?" she inquired, eating her sandwich. I shrugged. "Honestly, not good. I can't concentrate at school, and my money is running out. I doubt I can continue." She gave me the compassionate look everyone has given me since I told them what happened. "Jake, you're trying. Just a blip." Joyless laughter. "Yes, a mountain-sized bump." She held my hand across the table. "You'll understand. You've always been brilliant, even if your parents don't know." Her kind words didn't change the fact that I was stuck in a situation I couldn't escape. I felt like I was treading water to avoid drowning. After lunch, I worked on my assignments at Mike's, but as I looked at the computer screen, I realized I was getting behind. My grades were decreasing, and I was considering dropping out. I didn't want to, but other options were running out. After several weeks of no improvement, my money fell, and I realized I had to choose. Mike could only cover so much, and I couldn't keep freeloading on him. Leaving college seemed like giving up all I'd worked for. Signing the paperwork in the dean's office made me feel like a failure. My aim of being the first in my family to graduate college was disappearing like everything else. After leaving that office, I realized I had no degree, strategy, or money. I gazed at my phone on Mike's couch that night, unsure what to do. Ashley always called to check on me. "Now the plan?" she whispered. "I keep looking for work, but nothing comes through. Like every door is closing on me." My caller hesitated, clearly trying to cheer me up. "You won't give up?" "I don't have a choice," I said, trying to speak clearly. "Today I dropped out." "Oh, Jake," she said. "The end is not here. Find something. I know you will." I wanted to trust her but was losing hope. For days, I applied for every job I could find, but Sunnyside Restaurant, a decrepit restaurant that hadn't been cleaned since the 1980s, was the only one that offered anything. Flipping burgers and mopping floors was better than nothing since I needed money. I had something despite the long hours and minimal money. Earl, my manager, barked directives like boot camp as I pounded grease-covered burgers on the grill. Maybe Earl witnessed my hard work. He was tough and only cared about money. After a month at the diner, Earl approached me during a break. "Nice work ethic, child. Want more hours?" My forehead was sweaty, so I wiped it off to look engaged. "My friend needs a better paying night guard at this downtown office building. You in?" No consideration required. "Yes, I'm in." Flipping burgers by day and guarding an empty building at night, though unglamorous, it was something. I stopped affording sleep and was exhausted most nights, barely able to open my eyes, but I had to survive. Ashley kept sending me links to tech internships to get me back on track, but I didn't have time or energy to apply. I live for survival now. Every night, as I sat in that dark, empty office building staring at the city's flashing lights, I wondered, how did my life become this way? A few months earlier, I had aspirations and a future. Now I was surviving one shift at a time. The worst part was seeing no way 2 jobs were hell. The cafe was filthy and the nights in that empty office building were mind-numbing. I lived in a beat-up knapsack, slept 4 hours a night, and sipped energy drinks like water. I was making money, not much, but enough to keep me going. Mike didn't say anything, but I think he was glad I could help with rent. I didn't want to be the guy freeloading off my closest friend as my life went apart, so I handed him everything. A random things changed quickly when this guy came in for lunch while flipping burgers at the diner. I don't know if it was chance or the universe providing me a break. First, I didn't notice, just another customer. He looked fatigued, like the rest of us who worked too many hours for inadequate pay. After supper, he paid at the counter and gazed at the computer screen behind the register as I gave him his change. I practiced coding on break to keep sharp. He asked casually but suspiciously, "You're into coding?" I nodded, trying not to look thrilled. "I taught myself. Hopefully it will be a career. I could have something for you. My organization requires entry-level IT professionals. Not fancy, but a start." I blinked, questioning what I heard. "Seriously?" "Yes." He shrugged. "Send me your resume. I'll represent you." I accepted his business card shaking, hoping for a bit of hope after months. That night, I ignored my double-shift exhaustion and started my laptop resume, which was imperfect but something. I wrote Mike before overthinking it and trying not to get hopeful. Turning point. After a few days, I believed he was being nice and I wouldn't be called. One afternoon, while working my night shift in that dreary, abandoned office building, my phone buzzed. It was a company email. I hesitated to open the screen before responding with an interview invitation. It was shocking to go from flipping burgers and guarding vacant buildings to perhaps working in IT. I rode the bus to work after stealing Mike's fine clothing and joining a modest, unassuming business that appeared like a new planet after a basic interview. Trevor from the diner greeted me at the door and introduced me to Tina, his supervisor. Tina was fierce but fair. I informed her I had self-taught coding and IT without a degree. She was first disappointed by my small efforts, but she then asked me to fix a technical issue promptly, which I had never done. I panicked, but then I remembered all those late evenings I spent training and coding challenges for fun. I exhaled slowly and worked, trying not to feel pressurized. After I finished, Tina nodded and gazed at Trevor without saying much. She said, "He's got potential. Give him a shot." Despite feeling like my heart was ready to explode, I tried to stay cool. New beginning the following week, I started as an entry-level IT person. It wasn't glamorous, but I didn't care. For the first time in months, I wasn't selling burgers or guarding scary office buildings at 3 a.m. I was doing something I enjoyed for the first time in months, and Tina and Trevor patiently taught me and encouraged me to study. Not being held hand through everything was perfect. To prevent losing this opportunity, I worked at the startup all day and went to the diner or office at night. Sleep was rare, and most mornings I felt like a car had hit me. I couldn't have survived without Ashley, who gave me job leads and checked on the startup. She reminded me that I was building something for myself when I felt like I was falling apart. After months of beating, I broke. I couldn't work 2 jobs and be sane, so I quit. Earl was sad but understood. "Good luck, kid," he said earnestly. "You work hard. You'll be fine." It was amazing to leave the diner. I worked security nights when I wasn't at the business, but I wasn't burning out as fast. Over time, I dedicated every free moment to IT, acquiring new skills, performing projects, and absorbing knowledge. I was constructing something genuine, mine. I wondered if I was following a pipe dream, but every time I overcame a challenge or solved a problem that had stumped me for hours, that spark returned. Long missing fire. It took time for me to see my future again. I wanted my future, not my parents'. First time in years, that was enough. Some months into the new job, things felt different. Not bad, just different from what I had felt in a while. Finally doing something I liked. I wasn't going to a dead-end job. Code and fix it were fun, but not glamorous. Get something I worked hard for. Tina went to my workstation one afternoon while I was programming. I loved her directness. She said, "Jake, I've been following your work for months. You have promised yet are holding back." I glanced at her, shocked. "Holding back? You mean what?" She crossed her arms and looked like she knew the answer but wanted me to say it. "You're talented, but you're cautious and adhere to familiarity. You lack risk-taking and pushing. Being comfortable is good, but comfort doesn't work in business." I was unclear what to say. She was right, I was doing the work, but not well. After everything, I was grateful to be stable and not mess up. Tina replied, "Look, Jake, you're good, but you need to improve to stand out. Try scary projects. You grow that way." I nodded, still understanding her words. This wasn't my parents' counsel to quit wasting my ability. This individual saw it and encouraged me. I followed her advice and volunteered for harder jobs I wasn't sure I could handle. I occasionally felt overwhelmed, but solving an issue was worth it. Tina handed me a big client job. I was scared since it was more responsibility than I'd ever had, but I was excited to prove I could do it. After weeks of late nights, weekends, and free time to perfect the project, I felt like I had run a marathon. I was exhausted, but I felt stronger. Several days later, Tina invited me into her office. I sat down, anxious about making a mistake. She acted swiftly. "Jake, your client liked your work. Every suggestion you made is being implemented." Unknowingly, I exhaled. "Really?" She nodded with a little smile. "You did great. Keep going and you'll succeed." Leave her office and I felt 10 feet tall. I thrived for the first time in forever and saw a future of building instead of scraping by. As I pushed harder, I understood how much I was holding back, not only in my career but in life. This cloud lifted, and I could see what I could do if I stopped afraid. Mistakes were inevitable, but they taught and progressed me. Ashley was always supportive, but she suddenly seemed proud of me. Instead of grumbling about my poor work or money, I'd talk about my new project or something fantastic I learned at dinner. She'd listen, really listen, like she could see I was on my way. After a long week at work, we sat on her couch one night. I was exhausted but happy. She smiled. She said, I always knew you'd get here. Maybe not as planned, but you're doing it. You make it happen. I didn't know how to answer. She was with me through the worst, when I didn't know whether I'd make rent or where my next salary would come from. She made me feel safe and valued. Hearing her say that, I understood how lucky I was. Thanks, I said forcefully. I don't think I'd have made it this far without you. You would have, she laughed, shaking her head. A push was all you needed? She may have been right, but her presence helped. Then things got better. I took on more duties and improved, and others noticed. Every time I finished one of Tina's harder assignments, I felt more confident. For the first time in years, I felt secure. I stopped security and wasn't making much money, but I wasn't afraid about my next meal. Tina summoned me into her office again one afternoon. I expected another extravagant project, but she had a serious look I hadn't seen before. She said, Jake, I want to talk to you about your future here. Calmly but directly. Unsure of the direction, I arched an eyebrow. Okay. She reclined in her chair. You've done well in recent months. I think you're ready for more. I wish to make you full-time. After she started, I sat there trying to process it. Full-time? The dream? No more juggling jobs or scraping by. I don't even know what to say. I smiled. Smiled, just say yes. Yes, I did. After leaving that office, I felt lighter. All the strain, sleepless nights, and self-doubt were worth it. I arrived, though not as planned, and that felt good. Being promoted to full-time was like visiting a new planet. For the first time, I felt like I was doing something meaningful for myself and others without working a miserable side job. It was steady. After attaining that milestone, work got frantic. Tina meant it when she said I'd get additional responsibilities. I led teams for the first time and managed impossible deadlines on larger projects. My to-do list sometimes made me worry how I would do it all, but I had to. Every day was a challenge, but it was the kind that made me feel alive. It was significant to be trusted to do the job while still learning. Tina summoned me into her office again one afternoon. Every time she did, I felt like I was in school waiting to pass or fail a test. She looked serious, and I wondered if I'd done something wrong. She added, Jake, I've got another project for you. Pushing a folder over the desk. I took it and flipped through. The new customer was a big company modernizing its IT infrastructure. Bigger than anything I'd done before. My stomach flipped when excited and scared. This is a lot, I said, trying to seem confident but not arrogant. I think you're ready. Tina nods. I need you to guide the organization through this major undertaking. Guide it? I was shocked. I worked hard, but heading a project looked advanced. I said, I won't let you down, feeling her faith. I know you won't, she said, smiling briefly. Next week was my busiest. I worked nights and weekends at work making sure everything was fine. My staff was excellent, but I couldn't let anyone down under pressure. Ashley was wonderful, although I was rarely around and a zombie. She brought takeout to work, sat with me, and reminded me to take breaks. You're going to burn out if you don't slow down, she warned. I adored this idea and thought it would change my career and life if I succeeded. I had to prove myself, not Tina or the firm, that I could handle this. I barely slept the night before the client presentation, mentally double and triple checking everything to make sure there were no loose ends. I felt like all my tension and anxiety from the year had built up to this moment, and I was about to do something significant. The next morning, I entered the boardroom to find the clients in suits and ties looking serious. I put up my presentation to calm my nerves, but it seemed like my career hinged on this meeting. Tina sat at the head of the table, watching me. I breathed deeply, comforted myself, and started the lecture. I stumbled over a few words and slides, but I answered their questions, explained the idea, and showed why they required this update. During what seemed like an eternity, no one talked. They scanned the documentation and whispered. My stomach flipped, and I half expected them to take everything apart. The IT department chief said, "This looks good," nodding. "We'll proceed." I was astonished and wanted to jump up and fist pump like a fool, but I nodded like it was just another day at work, yelling with joy. Tina took me aside after the meeting. "Great work," she said, beaming. "You've earned this." Her praise or the fact that I finished my largest assignment hit me harder. I felt like I'd passed an unseen finish line. After months of work, I left the office that night, relieved. I didn't care that I'd probably be back there in the morning working on something else. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was where I should be. On my way home, I excitedly called Ashley. "We did it, babe. The presentation was well received. We're proceeding?" Pride showed in her laughter. You would, I knew. So proud of you, Jake. Hearing that made it real. I wasn't the lost, fearful kid who'd been kicked out of his parents' house. I'd built something for myself on my terms. There was less uncertainty about the future. I thrived, not just survived. And that feeling? It was all worth it. I went from struggling to excelling in IT a few years after that big job assignment, and I was surprised when I started my own firm. After working for a while, I had a good reputation, saved money, and made connections, so I was ready to jump. Starting my own business was hard. There were restless nights, countless paperwork, and constant worry that everything might fail. I felt this was my calling, so I kept going. I got contracts, built a small but solid crew, and the company took off. After 2 years, we made more money than I expected. I didn't serve burgers or protect vacant buildings. I grew my firm every month. I had built it. Ashley and I contemplated buying a house when my company took off. After years of renting, we wanted our own home. We looked at ads, attended weekend open houses, and fantasized about our ideal home. Seeing my boyhood house, which my parents still live in, for sale prevented me from surfing real estate sites. I was surprised to discover their house for sale. I hadn't spoken to them in years and didn't follow their life. I clicked on the advertisement to learn more. Their landlord had sold the property at a discount compared to surrounding homes. I suddenly had a crazy idea. Buy the house. Who buys their parents' house after eviction? It seemed petty, but I could, but they didn't know I had money or was considering buying a property. This could be my chance to reclaim control over a situation that had kept me powerless for years. I called my realtor and placed a bid without hesitation. It was inexpensive, and I had the money to accomplish it. A few weeks later, the purchase closed, and I acquired my childhood home. Now things get interesting. The property manager called me the day after the deal. The tenants are asking to meet the new owner, said. They want to discuss the rent and some issues they've been having. I grinned internally. Good things were coming. Not telling them, I told property management to make the appointment. The plan was in my brain. After parking my car in front and knocking like a landlord, Dad answered the door. He was surprised but didn't recognize me because we hadn't seen each other in years. I didn't appear like the guy who left their house with a duffel bag and no plan. We're here to meet the landlord, he exclaimed. That's me, I said, entering like I owned it. He blinks in amazement. Wait, what? You're the landlord? Yeah, I said, trying not to laugh. I bought the place. My mom came from the living room, wide-eyed. Jake, she shouted. Why are you here? I smiled and leaned against the wall. Well, I'm your landlord now. They were speechless, still absorbing the fact that the boy they kicked out years before owned their house. Though I wasn't celebrating, it seemed fair. Business was my obligation. I began. So, breaking the awkward quiet. About the rent. They stared at me unprepared. I stated, I'm tripling it, calmly. Dad was stunned. Triple it? You're kidding. I replied, oh, I'm dead serious. Property values have risen, so I need a reasonable return on my investment. Rent is rising, a lot. Mom shook and reasoned with me. Jake, we can't afford that. You know we can't. I shrugged. That's not my issue. You can pay the new rent or move. Up to you. Though tough, I wouldn't back down. Years ago, they kicked me out, so now I set the terms. The stunned couple may have realized they had no choice but to stand there with no credit and no options. I left after an awkward talk to let them figure things out. I drove away feeling satisfied, vindicated, and hollow. I proved them wrong and succeeded despite everything they did to me, but as I drove away from that house, I realized that rent hikes and property ownership couldn't fix it. This was about release, not revenge. I wouldn't lower rent. Parents funded siblings, ignored me. I built my own success, uncovered their betrayal, and chose a new family over being the forgotten child. Hello, Reddit. I need to talk about something today. I'm 27 years old. I suppose you could say that I've been the one ignored my entire life. My younger brother Chris, 25 million, and older sister Sarah, 29 feet, are my siblings. It would be an understatement to suggest that they were always the golden children. In my parents' view, they could never do anything wrong, but I was just there. Sarah excelled academically as a child, consistently receiving straight A's and participating in all school-related activities before attending a prestigious Ivy League university. It was my parents' obsession. They couldn't stop raving about how delighted they were the moment she received her admission letter, I promise. They invited all of her relatives and friends to this lavish celebration party, We felt as though we were celebrating Sarah's academic achievement with a second Christmas. Chris, however, didn't have to make a concerted effort. For him, everything just appeared to go smoothly. Following Sarah's example, he enrolled in a prestigious graduate program. My parents also ensured that everything was prepared for him. They purchased him a new laptop, helped him move, paid his tuition, and more. Then there was me. I attended a state college instead of an Ivy League school. Although it was a fine school, I had the impression that my parents wouldn't boast about it the way they did about Chris and Sarah. They kind of nodded and muttered something like, "That's great, Michael," when I informed them I had been accepted, but I could tell they weren't really into it. No party, no celebration. If we ordered takeaway that night, I was lucky. I made an effort to ignore it, but as I grew older, I became more aware of how different things were for me than for them. The money was just as important as the attention. Consider the wedding of Sarah. $200,000 is no laughing matter. The setting, the catering, the dress, my parents went all out. They handled it like it was the biggest thing ever. Some members of our family were even flown in from out of state. They covered all of Chris's graduate school expenses and provided him with rent assistance until he was able to support himself. They also took care of his educational loans, so he didn't even need to worry about those. But me? I asked my parents for assistance when I was just starting out in my job and required some work-related tools, things that were necessary to even get started. I received $7,000. Please understand that $7,000 is a substantial sum of money. However, it kind of hurts when you contrast that with $200,000 for a wedding or fully covering someone's tuition. I felt like I was only receiving the bare minimum so they could claim to have been helpful. And it wasn't just the cash. I always felt like the odd one out whenever our family gathered together. Every discourse at family dinners revolved around Chris's most recent accomplishment or Sarah's fancy job. As they sat there, they would discuss their upcoming extravagant plans, vacations, or improvements to their homes. I would be sitting there consuming my meal while attempting to come up with anything to add to the discussion. What was I going to say though, really? It seemed like my accomplishments paled in comparison to what they were doing. Hey, I just finished a big project at work, and I'm still paying off my car. One dinner in particular, perhaps a year ago, comes to mind. As was customary, the topic of conversation shifted to Sarah's most recent travel plans as we were all seated around the table. "Oh, we're going to Europe for a few weeks," she revealed nonchalantly as she sipped her drink. "It's just so nice that Mom and Dad are able to help out with the expenses." Chris added his voice as well, discussing some of the wedding expenses that were paid for. In a casual tone, he remarked, "I honestly don't know what we would have done without that $200,000. Emily immediately burst out laughing, saying, "Thanks to our parents covering everything," expressing her relief that the tuition hikes had no effect on her. They seemed to be hammering their words into my head as I sat there attempting to concentrate on my plate. It wasn't just the money. I had to work for my advancement and take out loans to make ends meet, whereas they had their futures handed to them. They pretended not to have to worry about it, but every dollar seemed like a fight. The worst thing? I wasn't even included in the discourse, yet nobody appeared to notice. My face became hot, my hands clenched beneath the table, and I could feel my irritation mounting until I was unable to contain it any longer. I whispered something to me. "Must be nice." There was silence in the room. Everyone was watching me. It was Sarah who spoke first. With a confused and annoyed expression on her face, as if she couldn't even begin to comprehend why I was unhappy, she questioned, "What's that supposed to mean, Michael?" I inhaled deeply while attempting to remain composed, but everything spilled out quickly. It means that not all of us get everything handed to us on a silver platter. Some of us actually have to work for what we need. They clearly didn't understand. As if it were no great issue, Chris simply shrugged and relaxed back in his chair. He smiled smugly and added, "Michael, you're always acting like you're the victim. Didn't Mom and Dad help you get those tools for work?" That struck a chord. Even though they gave me $7,000, it seems insignificant in comparison to what they have done for Chris and Sarah. I said, "Yeah, they helped, firmly. But $7,000 compared to hundreds of thousands? It's not the same, and you know it." As usual, Mom tried to defuse the situation. "Michael, we thought that's what you needed. We've always tried to give you what was fair." "Fair?" I asked, my voice bursting with resentment. "You think this is fair? You've given them everything. You've practically paved their roads for them, and I've had to build mine brick by brick." From there, the discussion took a turn for the worst. Everyone made an effort to justify themselves and claim that I was exaggerating. Dad shook his head and remarked, "You're exaggerating this?" "No," I replied. "You gave me the minimum." That's the part that hurts the most. You didn't care about what I wanted, only what you thought was enough to keep me quiet. It was more than I could handle. Without saying another word, I got up and walked out of the room, my chair making a loud scraping sound against the floor. I didn't turn around, but their voices followed me as I left the room. I was tired of constantly getting the leftovers and being the one who was forgotten. That night, I was furious and stormed out of the house. I don't believe I've ever been that angry. My heart was thumping in my chest, like if it were trying to escape. It seemed like the world was closing in on me with each step I took down the driveway. I had no idea where I was heading. I simply knew that I had to leave, far away. It was late, maybe around 10 o'clock, and there was silence on the streets. You know that spooky silence where everything seems a little too motionless? Yes, that was it. As I went, the only sound was the sound of my sneakers hitting the pavement. I wasn't in the mood for distractions, so I didn't have my phone out or my headphones on. I had to think. I kept thinking about the supper while I was walking, Chris's arrogant expression, Sarah's patronizing inquiries. They all seemed to be living in a bubble of privilege and were unaware of how oppressive it was for me. I was merely an outsider with a window into their lovely little world. My frustration grew as I gave it more attention. Why didn't I say more was a question I kept asking myself. Why didn't I actually give it to them? However, I later came to the realization that my words would have had no impact. Talking to a brick wall was like that. I had my version of what happened, and they had theirs, and the two were never going to coincide. I eventually made my way to the park where I used to spend my childhood. The residence was only a 15-minute walk away. Some trees kind of obscured an old bench and a spot next to the playground. It was one of those locations you travel to when you simply need to escape from everything, and I needed that. I took a seat and simply gazed up at the sky while leaning back against the chilly wood. On this particular clear night, all the stars were visible. It would normally be soothing to me, but that night it didn't help. I couldn't stop thinking about how unfair everything was, how I had spent my entire life striving to fit in, only to be given scraps while my siblings had it all. I briefly considered not glancing at my phone as it buzzed in my pocket. However, my curiosity overcame me, and I took it out. It was Emily's text, of course. "Michael, where did you go? You need to come back. Let's talk about this." "Speak?" "Yes, exactly. I have previously heard that. Nothing in my family was ever resolved by talking. The routine was always the same. Mom and Dad would explain why things were the way they were, and I would be told to accept it. However, I wasn't in the mood for any more justifications this time. I stuffed my phone back in my pocket without answering the text. I began to mentally review everything as I sat there, including the years I had been ignored and the times I had felt like an afterthought. Even if I wasn't a flawless child, I still didn't deserve to be treated any less than the other kids. It wasn't truly about the money. It was about being appreciated and seen. And for whatever reason, my parents had come to the conclusion that Sarah or Chris's wants and aspirations were more important than mine. I'm not sure how long I sat there, but eventually the cold began to set in. The nights were growing colder, and fall was rapidly approaching. The wind sliced through the thin material of my jacket as I drew it firmly about myself. I considered going home, but the notion of going back inside that house and confronting them after everything that had transpired was too much to take. I became aware of something while I sat there. I was sick of battling for meager attention and support. I wasn't just angry anymore. I decided then and there that I was done. I'm done trying to fit into their ideal little family photo and to get them to notice me. With a renewed sense of resolve, I rose from the bench. It was time to put myself first and create the life I desired without continuously looking for their approval. I didn't require their sympathy or handouts. I was determined to make it myself and demonstrate to them what they had been missing for years. I experienced an odd mixture of relief and melancholy as I made my way back to my flat. I was relieved that I was at last taking charge of my own life, but I was also sad about the familial relationship I was giving up. I felt like I was headed in the right direction for the first time in a long time, even though I knew it wouldn't be simple. I took a seat at my desk and began making plans as soon as I arrived home. I was determined to put my all into my profession and create something for myself. Maybe they'll realize what they've been missing out on for years when I've succeeded and reached my goals on my own terms. But I had a job to do for the time being. It was time to begin crafting my own narrative, one in which I was more than a supporting character in the accomplishments of others. I was prepared for the moment that would be my chance to shine. First update. Since my last post, which was around 2 years ago, a lot has transpired. I made a choice that would change the trajectory of my life following that terrible family supper. I had had enough of being the afterthought and the forgotten son. It was time to go out on my own, free from my family's support or meddling. I approached my task with a level of resolve I had never experienced before. I began by working longer hours and taking on more tasks and responsibilities at work. After my employer took note, I received a promotion offer a few months later. Though not very significant, it was a positive start. This company idea had always been in the back of my thoughts. I now concluded that the moment had come to turn it into a reality. I planned, saved, and researched whenever I had free time. I reduced all of my expenses, including eating out, buying new clothes, and taking trips. I invested every extra dollar in my company fund. I finally got enough money to launch my firm after a year or so of saving and planning. It was a digital startup that specialized in creating small business software. The initial months were harsh. I was working nonstop, attempting to balance software development, customer meetings, and all of the administrative duties involved in managing a company. After being impressed by my work, a local business owner referred me to his network, which was my first big break. All of a sudden, I had more clients than I could manage alone. My first employee was hired, followed by my second. I had a tiny staff working for me before I realized it. My confidence increased along with the business. I felt like I was actually succeeding on my own terms for the first time in my life. I was no longer living in the shadow of others. I was making something significant, something wholly original. My family was aware of the change, of course. Initially, Emily's texts were just inquisitive inquiries about my well-being. My answers were succinct and ambiguous. Then followed the family get-together invitations, which I graciously turned down because of my professional obligations. The first person to really push was Sarah. One day, she unexpectedly arrived at my workplace. Sarah's eyes widened as she took in the workplace when I walked out to the reception area. Although it wasn't very ostentatious, it was contemporary, polished, and obviously effective. Her voice was a mixture of astonishment and something else I couldn't quite pinpoint when she said, "Michael, this is amazing. Why didn't you inform us of everything?" I shrugged and spoke in a neutral tone. "I have been quite busy." She scowled, obviously dissatisfied with my response. "We have been concerned for you. You no longer attend family dinners. We hardly ever hear back from you." Their parents believe they have done something incorrectly. I experienced a little twinge of guilt. But then I recalled all those years of suffering and feeling inferior as they navigated life with the help of our parents. I said, "I'm doing fine. Actually, it's better than fine." For a while, I simply had to concentrate on my own life. My business kept expanding as the months passed. We expanded our workforce and relocated to a larger office. I even appeared as a rising entrepreneur to watch in a local business publication. My phone was inundated with texts from my family on the day the piece was published. They were all excited, proud, and celebratory. Alongside those emotions, though, I could feel their perplexity and perhaps even a hint of hurt that they were reading about my achievement in a magazine instead of directly from me. None of the mails received a response from me. A part of me felt grim satisfaction, and another part felt guilt. They were the ones on the outside looking in for a change. It was them who were pondering, inquiring, and attempting to comprehend. The next to get in touch was Chris. One evening, as I was leaving the office, he called. When I lifted him up, he said, "Hey, little brother. No talk for a long time. I read that article about your business. It was really amazing." I answered in a neutral tone, "Thanks. A lot of work has gone into this, but it's paying off." "Look," he went on, "we miss you, dude, even though I know the family has been acting strangely recently. This weekend, how about we have supper together? We may congratulate your success and catch up." I was tempted for a second. A part of me missed my family in spite of everything. I thought back to all those dinners, though, where I felt invisible. All the occasions when Chris or Sarah's accomplishments were highlighted above mine. I said, "Thank you for the invitation, but I have a lot of work to do right now, perhaps at a later day." Even though my accomplishment was fulfilling, I realized as I was driving home that evening that it hadn't made things better with my family. It had, if anything, made it wider. I was pleased with my accomplishments and pleased that I had completed everything by myself. However, my success came with a loneliness I hadn't expected. I wasn't prepared to close that gap though. Not quite yet. I had been the family's afterthought for far too long. I wasn't sure whether there was still space for them in my own story, which I was now writing. I would deal with whatever came next on my own terms. Second update. About a year and a half has passed since my last post, and my life has changed drastically once more. The expansion of my tech company has surpassed my wildest expectations. We now serve mid-sized businesses throughout the state as part of our extended service offering. We were listed as one of the top 50 startups to watch in a major business magazine last month. My phone was inundated with congratulations the day the piece was published, but one in particular, a voicemail from my mother, stood out. "Michael, honey, it's Mom. We saw the article. Your father and I are so proud of you. We'd love to talk if you have a moment. Please call us back when you can." I was taken aback. My parents hadn't spoken to me directly in more than a year. I wasn't sure how to react after so much time, so I didn't call back right away. A week later, my assistant told me I had guests when I was working late. I was shocked to see my folks standing in the lobby. They appeared older and more worn out than I had recalled. When they saw me, their eyes glowed with a mixture of pride and apprehension, but Mom's hair had more gray and Dad's shoulders appeared to slump. Mom said hesitantly, "Michael, we hope you don't mind us dropping by like this. We simply had to see you." I escorted them to my office, where they gazed at the contemporary furnishings and the accolades that lined the bookcases. They hadn't seen the struggling child like that in a long time. "This is really amazing, son," Dad remarked in a rough, emotional voice. "You've accomplished a lot for yourself." The uneasy silence was broken by Mom. "We must apologize to you, Michael. After much consideration, we've come to the conclusion that we treated you differently from your siblings. We sincerely apologize for not seeing it at the time, but we do now." A lump formed in my throat. I'd been waiting so long to hear this, but I wasn't sure how to react when the time came. Dad bent over. "We're proud of you, son, not only for your accomplishments but also for taking on this challenge alone. We were oblivious to your abilities until you demonstrated them to us." After that we spoke for a while. I discovered that I was talking more about the setbacks and victories over the previous few years. It was odd, but in a way, it felt perfect, like the puzzle pieces were finally coming together. After a moment of hesitation, Mom continued, "There's something else we wanted to talk to you about, Michael." As our conversation came to an end, "We need your assistance." Immediately, I felt my guard go up. "What sort of assistance?" They looked at one another, and then Dad said something. "The family business is at issue. Son, we're in trouble. We haven't kept up with the changes in the market. Failure to upgrade promptly will put us in danger of becoming bankrupt." Mom hurriedly added, "Especially after everything, we hate to ask. However, we reasoned that given your technological and business acumen." I sat back, feeling a lot of different emotions. Even though their apology appeared genuine and I wanted to get back in touch, I couldn't help but feel suspicious. Was this the true cause of their unexpected arrival? At last, I answered, "I need some time to think about this. There's a lot to take in." With a hopeful yet nervous expression, they nodded. Mom gave me a hard hug as I walked them out. She whispered, "Michael, you are loved. Regardless of what you decide." I spent a lot of time sitting in my office after they went, gazing out at the city lights. I had put forth a lot of effort to prove myself and get here. My family was now requesting my assistance, right after I had achieved the height of my prosperity. I didn't miss the irony. There was a part of me that wanted to be the greater person and offer them assistance. However, a part of me that recalled years of feeling inferior wanted to say no, to let them know that I didn't need them any more than they had needed me. I understood that there was more at stake here than simply business. It had to do with family, forgiveness, and the kind of person I wanted to be. Whatever I chose would influence not just how I interacted with my family but also the type of man I was growing into. With my parents' number displayed on the screen, I took out my phone and gazed at it. Is it better to call or not? Is it better to assist or not? The later the night became and the quieter the city below, the more I thought about the choice. Reddit, what would you do? Do I still owe my family anything after all of this, or is it time to put this chapter behind me for good? Third update. My parents requested assistance with their failing business a month ago. I hired a private investigator since something wasn't quite right. I was shocked by what I found. Instead of failing, the family firm was doing quite well. They had recently landed a big deal. However, it wasn't all. Financial deception spanning years was discovered by the investigator. Inflating the costs of Sarah and Chris's education and marriages, my parents had been transferring funds into personal accounts. $200,000 for Sarah's wedding. A large portion of money was transferred to a covert investing account in her name. Emily's tuition was actually paid into a high-yield savings account, and Chris had a trust fund. In addition to favoring my siblings, they had deliberately worked to secure their financial prosperity at my expense. I was enraged. The deliberate choice to keep me out had been made during all those years of feeling inferior and struggling while my siblings navigated life. I summoned my legal staff to a meeting. There were certain dubious tax strategies that could lead to issues if they were discovered, even if the majority of my parents' acts fell into legal limbo. I invited my folks to come to work with me. They came with a hopeful expression, perhaps expecting me to assist them. When they saw my reaction, their faces sank. I said icily, "Sit down. We must speak." I presented all that I had found. I saw their expressions change from shock to guilt to dread with every admission. "How did you accomplish this?" With a trembling voice, I asked. "You were purposefully keeping me down while uplifting everyone else, even though I felt inadequate all these years. Why?" My mom broke down in tears. According to my father's explanation, they viewed me as the self-sufficient powerful one. He spoke in a hollow voice. I interrupted him, saying, "I don't want excuses. I want you to be aware of what is about to happen." I informed them that I had contacted the IRS anonymously about their dubious tax procedures. Additionally, I had provided Sarah, Chris, and Emily with proof of how they had profited from our parents' dishonesty. I remarked, "Your ideal family image is about to fall apart. And you can't buy your way out of it this time. Please, Michael," my father pleaded. "We can make this right. We'll put things right." I chuckled without humor. "That's the issue, Dad. You continue to believe that money can solve any problem. However, you cannot purchase my forgiveness. The years I spent feeling unworthy are irreplaceable." I got to my feet. "Go now. Never again do I want to hear from any of you. I no longer consider myself to have a family." My mother glanced back, crying, as they walked away. "You are loved, Michael. We always have." I gave her a direct look. "I don't want to be involved if this is how you define love." I stayed in my office for a while after they left, feeling a mixture of relief, betrayal, and rage. I was relieved that I could finally stop questioning my value and that I knew the truth. Sarah, Chris, and Emily sent me texts in the days that followed. Some were irate, some beseeching. None of them received a response from me. With fresh energy, I pushed myself back into my work. My business kept expanding, and I discovered fulfillment in coaching aspiring business owners from comparable backgrounds. 6 months have passed since that altercation. The pain of what I've lost, or rather, what I never truly had, still aches on some days. Mostly, though, I feel liberated. Free from the burden of attempting to convince others of my value when they never intended to. I am aware that some people may believe that I was too severe and that the family deserves forgiveness. However, I've discovered that leaving poisonous relationships, even ones that include your own blood, can occasionally be the healthiest course of action. To everyone who has ever felt like the odd one out, know that your value is not based on how your family views you. You possess the ability to craft your own narrative, generate your own achievements, and locate those who will appreciate you for who you are. For my part, I'm concentrating on creating my chosen family, which consists of friends and coworkers that encourage me, share in my accomplishments without feeling envious, and support me during difficult times without keeping score. Regardless of our backgrounds or experiences, let's celebrate fresh starts, chosen families, and creating our own narratives. We have the power to influence the future, and I'm eager to see where that takes us. Am I the asshole for jumping out of the way when my niece and nephew tried to push me into a pool, causing them to fall in instead? Original post. OOP reluctantly goes to a family BBQ. OOP's nephews and nieces push people into the pool and eventually try with OP. OP sees this coming from a mile away and steps out of the way, and the kids fall in, along with the phone they were holding to record. OP's sisters got pissed for almost letting their kids drown, and because the phone is now at the bottom of the pool. They insist that OP should have let the kids push him into the pool and OP needs to apologize. OP is voted NTA update post. OP spends the first part of this post explaining that the kids were fully capable of swimming and that the party ended on a sour note. Turns out drunk BL who faceplanted had to get stitches. Sisters and Bills texted mean shit to OP and he and his wife blocked them. Mom and Dad were pissed at the text and made the sisters apologize and end this nonsense. OP thought things were over but instead gets a text from one Bill saying OP needs to reimburse them for the phone. OP refuses, sends a screenshot to his parents and says he's going no contact with sisters. In what OP says is an out-of-character move, Dad calls sisters and rips them a new one. Grandkids are no longer welcome at their place indefinitely, which messes up the free babysitting Mom provides. They are banned from the vacation house and he tells them that OOP owns that vacation house, not the parents. Sisters freak out. Sisters and husbands come over unannounced to apologize a few days later. OP and wife are out at dinner so they leave a note. OP decides no contact is the best option for now. Update 2. Well, it's been an interesting last few days. I thought the shit had hit the fan before, but it was more of a fart compared to what's happened this week. TLDR. OP provides financial context here. OP's sisters think parents are dripping in money when in fact they are not. Turns out oldest sis and her fam have been living beyond their means and are in need of a loan, which parents can't give. She's also been renting out the vacation house once a month or so for the last 3 years and has been keeping the money. Another sister was aware of this and possibly has rented it out previously as well. OP's parents feel awful and let OP know. They figure that the sisters will try to convince OOP to let them rent out the house. Turns out they're right. The sisters show up and practically force their way inside OOP's house to convince them to let them use the place. They also say, quoting from OOP here, "I've been a shitty brother and that I needed to step up and plan on paying for their kids' college tuition since that's what family does." OOP calls them out on their bullshit and there's a huge blow up and the sisters leave. OP is exhausted, frustrated and drained. Update 3. TLDR. OP's parents decide they're done managing the vacation home, keeping track of who was using it, routine maintenance, etc., because sisters keep pressuring them to use it. OP feels bad for his parents because he wanted them to be able to use it regularly and now dynamics have changed, but he gets it. OP locks the gate with a heavy-duty chain and lock, resets all keypads and creates new codes, gets security cameras and has signs put up saying the area is monitored by video. OP gets a call from both husbands trying to convince him to let them use the house, like they always have. The older BL tried to go up with some friends but couldn't get in. He threatens on the phone to basically break in and acts completely entitled. Other BL sounds like he is being made to call by sister. OOP obviously says no and considers selling the home. He also has no plans to initiate contact with sisters and they are not talking with him. Update 4. TLDR. OP hires a guy to look after the vacation home. Parents are continually pressured by sisters to tell OP to open up the vacation home for Thanksgiving. They refused and instead said they would organize a gathering at an Airbnb if everyone split the cost, otherwise they would host at their place. This causes an argument because the middle sister is for Airbnb, and the oldest sister doesn't have any money. So Thanksgiving will be at my parents' house but OOP and wife won't be there. Parents ask OOP to not sell for now as they would like to still use the place, but won't until sisters have come to terms with the new normal. Wife and OOP have stayed no contact with sisters, but they have called and left messages. OOP says F you Google Voice, demanding OOP meets with them and work out how everyone can use the family vacation home. OOP doesn't respond. OOP also does not plan to turn the vacation home into an Airbnb. This part is directly from the post. My parents tell me that the oldest sister and her husband are getting out of the leases for their SUV and big-ass truck and are selling their jet skis and some other shit they've never needed. That's going to be really hard on her. She's quite the braggart and won't like being seen in something older, smaller, cheaper. My Bill's identity is very much wrapped up with his truck as well. He even has a small tattoo of the truck company's logo. Which frankly is one of the many reasons why he and I never hung out. Update 5. Things have gone to hell. I really, truly did not think anything like this would happen. Short version, my brothers-in-law broke into my vacation home and were arrested. They've been charged with breaking and entering, destruction of property and communicating threats, all Class 1 misdemeanors. I've refused to drop the charges. I might do so if I'm fully paid for the damage they caused. They were still in jail as of Saturday evening. I assume they're out by now. Editor's note, my TLDR of the next part of the post bills went to the vacation home and cut through the chain, damaged the gate. They messed up the front door trying to get in, ended up getting through another door and then broke into the barn. David, the guy OOP hired to manage the home, called the cops. Cops didn't buy Bill's excuses that they were allowed and OOP was unreachable at the moment due to spending the day with his wife's family and leaving the phones in the car. Bills were booked at the sheriff's office. Sisters freaked out but OOP had them blocked. Older sister couldn't afford bail because their cards were maxed out so middle sis would have to pay for everything. OOP and his wife checked their phones late on Friday on their way home and found that mom and dad, the sheriff's department and David had all called. OOP called David when he got home and found out the extent of the damage. He ended Friday calling the sheriff's department and telling them it wasn't a misunderstanding and that Bills did not have his permission to be there. From OOP's post, I waited until Saturday afternoon to call my folks. They were both pretty rattled about it all, my mom in particular. My sisters had browbeat them into telling me I should tell the cops it was all a mistake and that I wanted the charges dropped. I refused flat out, told them there was no way I'd do that until I spoke with an attorney and also not until I was paid in full for whatever it will cost to fix everything 100%. My mom was crying hard by the time we got off the phone, which of course made me feel like shit. My dad suggested it was time for a complete start over but also said he thought they needed to pay for the damage. I haven't gone up to the property yet. There's nothing I can do and I'll probably go nuts when I see the damage in person. The photos are bad enough. I'm hoping for tomorrow or Wednesday, but my job isn't one I can just wander off from for non-emergencies. I've left messages with 2 attorney friends asking them to recommend the right lawyers to go after my sisters and BILs. I don't know what I can do exactly, but I'm hoping to get restraining orders. I have all the texts they've sent me. That might help. I'm strongly considering suing them for the money they made renting the place. I don't care about the cash, but it will help make them as miserable as possible. The gloves are definitely off at this point. A couple of side notes. Bills had no idea I'd hired someone to keep an eye on things or that there are cameras there now. My parents knew but hadn't told them because they knew it would just give my sisters a reason to drama up. There are signs on the property stating it's being monitored with cameras and no trespassing signs though. My wife has completely had it at this point. I don't blame her. She's been more than patient about it all, but she reached her limit and was not shy about letting me know. She told me it's up to me how I deal with this, but that she thought they all needed to be taught a hard lesson. Older BL likely won't face any repercussions at his job over this, but middle BL has a security clearance, so he might. I'm hoping that will be motivation for middle Bill to pay for the damages himself immediately. David, the caretaker, has an interesting background. I knew he was friends with some of the deputies, figured it was because they were all locals. I was wrong. He was a cop in a big city for years, was shot on duty and afterwards decided to quit and move to where his parents had retired. He has some PTSD over it all. His dog is a certified service animal and is usually with him. I know law enforcement people tend to hang together. I guess that's how they became his friend group. I don't want to see or speak with these a-holes for the rest of my life. I know this is in direct conflict with my overwhelming urge to make their lives as miserable as possible. Update 6. Didn't think I'd be doing another post this soon, but a lot has happened over the past 2 days. Short version, I think the corner has been turned on this crap. Thursday afternoon I got a courier-delivered envelope at my office. In it was a signed letter from both my brothers-in-law and a cashier's check for $5,000. In the letter they made what I have to say was a really sincere apology. Among other things, they acknowledged breaking in, acknowledged it was wrong, said the $5,000 was to pay for the damage and that they'd pay more if it cost more than that. Also said they'd stay away from the vacation home unless my wife and I specifically invited them. They also asked that I do what I could to get the charges dropped as soon as possible because they both could lose their jobs and that they'd agree to a restraining order or whatever else it took for that to happen. There was more as well, all conciliatory, but that's the gist of it. To say this was a shock is an understatement. It was, obviously, a total 180 from their past behavior. I'd already made an appointment with an attorney to see about suing my BILs over the damage and to try to get a restraining order. I called him and told him what I'd just received and he agreed to meet with me at the end of the day instead of next week. Told me not to deposit the check. We met for about 2 hours. He ended up recommending the wife and I do a settlement and mutual release agreement with all 4 of them, sisters and BILs. He said if we went after them via a lawsuit that we'd almost certainly win, but that it could take 2 years or more, there would be sizable upfront legal fees and that we might never see any money. He also said we could keep the $5,000 free and clear even if we didn't let them off the hook. He's drawing up the agreement. It won't be ready until Monday. The agreement will include what's essentially the civil equivalent of a restraining order. I'd already asked my property manager to work up a bid to get the damage repaired. I called him after the meeting and asked that he get me as close to an estimate as possible ASAP. Got that Friday. He thinks it will take around $4,000 to fix everything. Most of that is for the front door. On Friday my attorney contacted each of the BILs, told them what we were proposing and advised them to get their own lawyers. They both agreed to it. The middle BIL told him they could afford to either pay for the damages or pay for a lawyer but not both, and they figured a lawyer wouldn't make any difference given that they really had no defense for what they did. His biggest concern was if the charges could be dropped. From what I can tell, they're willing to do anything, sign anything to make this all go away. My attorney also called the DA's office on Friday to discuss dismissing the charges, got the name of the prosecutor and left them a message but has not spoken to them yet. He thinks they'll dismiss the charges because the bills are paying up and they have no priors, but then again he's not a criminal lawyer. Also said I should be prepared to drive up there Monday or Tuesday and tell the prosecutor in person that I want everything dismissed. He's also advised me to continue to be no contact with sisters and BILs especially for the next 6 months and that it will be really important to follow the terms of the agreement when it comes to future interactions with them. I'm guessing that the BILs' change of heart is due to them having figured out what's at stake for them, what it's going to cost them in legal fees and fines and so on. There's also the highly unlikely possibility that they could go to jail for up to 120 days, and as I've mentioned, one of them has a security clearance for his job that could be at risk. So this is their Hail Mary pass to keep their normal lives. This isn't a perfect resolution to the situation, but at least it will get me past the legal and financial parts of the shit show that I've been in for the past few months. I doubt I'll ever have a civil relationship with any of them ever again, and that's fine. What I want most at this point is to close this off, get on with my life, and never speak to any of them again. I'm exhausted from this. Wife feels pretty much the same way. Kind of a side issue, but getting the written apology was, weirdly, a huge moment for me. I wasn't expecting that ever, but apparently it matters to me quite a bit. The money doesn't feel particularly important at this moment. I'll damn sure take it though. Also, I'm pretty certain my middle sister and her husband came up with the money. The cashier's check is from the credit union of the company he works for. Once things are signed, I plan to make one more update, probably just an edit to this post. I'm sorry for being so pedantic. Writing these posts has helped clear my head, and the feedback has really helped. I truly appreciate everyone's comments, insights, and support. And I really hope none of you ever have to go through this kind of nonsense. Update 7. Tuesday morning I met with my attorney and went over the agreement. Changed a couple of minor things, and he sent it to my sisters and brothers-in-law. It included a requirement that they pay my attorney's fee, about $3,000. They weren't happy about that and tried to negotiate it away, but he told them they either accept it as is or there would be no deal at all, and we'd proceed with suing them for the money they got from renting out the place, wear and tear from renting it, repair costs from their break-in, emotional distress, lost income from having to deal with this, attorney fees, and whatever else we could. He also told them I would push hard with the DA's office to prosecute every charge. Short version, they came in and signed. I wasn't there. I'm told it was a pretty tense environment, that the middle Beal appeared to have taken charge, and that at one point he told both of my sisters to shut the hell up or he was walking away from the whole thing, making his own deal with us, and the rest of them could all go to hell. They provided another cashier's check for $2,500, claiming that's all they had. It's close enough that we're going to accept it as the final payment. Attorney also told me that everyone was very cold and curt towards one another, but that they all managed to keep it together long enough to sign and left without making too big of a scene. I drove up to the vacation house early yesterday to check out the damage and meet with the DA's office. Seeing the damage made my blood boil. It was so senseless. I was so pissed that I was ready to eat the cost of repairs and do everything I could to ruin their lives. Tried walking it off, failed utterly. Ended up calling a good friend who was kind enough to stay on the phone for over an hour letting me spew and vent. He eventually got me back to focusing on the bigger picture of putting this behind me and getting on with my life. Honestly, I'm still not sure that's what I want to do, but I settled down enough to get some food in me and I felt better. After lunch I went to the DA's office, hadn't made an appointment and had to wait a while, but got to meet with the assistant DA who's got the case. Short version is that since I don't want to prosecute and the BILs have already paid for the damages, that they are willing to drop all the charges except trespassing, which in this case will be a Class 2 misdemeanor. The BILs will have to plead guilty and pay whatever fine the judge sets. I'm also told that if they fight the trespassing charge or ever so much as fart in public up there, that it would go very poorly for them. It helped that the BILs didn't resist arrest. If they had, none of the charges would have been dropped. I also went by the sheriff's office to thank them for getting there so quickly and everything. Wanted to thank the deputies personally, but only spoke to the dispatch person. And I tried to meet up with David, the property manager, but couldn't get hold of him. A couple of notes. The agreement includes a no contact clause. Basically, if any of them show up where my wife or I are, or the other way around, whoever got there last has to leave immediately. No contact except through attorneys or other mutually agreed upon third parties. They get to keep whatever they made from renting the vacation house, my big give, unless I have tax consequences which they will be responsible for. And we release each other from all other liabilities up through the present. There's more to it than that, but those are the high points. Wife and I will sign the agreement later today. After that I can't talk about most of this, but I can talk around it. I think this is my final update regarding all this nonsense, but I'll respond to comments if I can. As I've said before, posting about all of this and reading folks' thoughts and responses has been really helpful and has probably been key in my being able to handle this in a relatively healthy way. So thank you all again. Update 8. Thought it would be worth an update for anyone who's interested. Unsurprisingly, my oldest sister and brother-in-law have filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. While I don't care about what happens to them financially or otherwise, they've also managed to drag my parents into their mess, which I'm not happy about. At the start of the year, my BIL's oversized customized Pride and Joy truck was repossessed. Pretty embarrassing for him, I'm sure. Happened at work. This was their breaking point. Without the truck they have to share a Kia my parents loaned them and they can barely fit in it with their 3 kids. Financially they're effed. They owe at least $125,000, probably more, on high-interest credit cards. They have zero equity in their house, and have a couple of personal loans that I'm pretty certain they got under false pretenses. They have loans on their jet skis, ATVs and trailers. They also owe a chunk of money from defaulting on the truck lease. They hadn't made any payments on their credit cards or loans in months and were behind on their house payments as well. They got out of the lease on my sister's massive SUV late last year. They were upside down on it as well, so had to come up with cash to do so. They also had to pay an attorney, the fine and court costs for my BIL's trespassing charge at the vacation house. And they owe my middle sister and her husband money for bail and their portion of the damages to the place. As I've mentioned before, my folks have never been financial wizards, but they have at least been generally responsible. They're retired, their home is paid off, and they live off of Social Security and pensions. Altogether they get more than they spend. Minimal savings, just an emergency fund. Turns out my folks emptied out that fund, cashed out their small IRA, $20,000, and gave it to my sister. That let her catch up on the house payment and cover the negative equity on her car lease. But now literally every bit of savings my parents possessed is gone. Plus my parents have been paying for their groceries for several months and continue to pay the insurance on the car they loaned my sister. According to my dad, my sisters worked my mom for weeks to get her to fork over the money. They'd worked on both my folks at the same time for a while, but my dad flat out refused every time. Eventually mom caved. She was worried that my sister would have to move to a hovel in some backwater town and that the kids would be barefoot and eating dirt. Dad's not happy about it, and to say there's some tension between them right now is an understatement. But they'll be fine. I was pretty disappointed when my parents told me all this, but I wasn't surprised. It sucks that they emptied out their savings to help, but I kind of get it. The way the bankruptcy laws are in our state, by getting caught up on the home loan, my sister should be able to keep the house. I tried hard not to say how I felt about this, and my sisters mostly succeeded. Really, I'm way more pissed about this than I should be. The worst part for me is that my sister and BIL could now contact me and my wife without any real fear of repercussions. The only penalty the no-contact agreement has is that if they violate it, we can go after them for the money they made from renting out the vacation house and related damages. Since they've filed for bankruptcy, that's now not an impediment for them. I'm hoping they'll leave us alone, but who knows. Folks also told me that my middle sister and her husband have hit a rough spot, and that he's not currently living with her and the kids. Just a guess, but I imagine he's had it with the whole family dynamic that caused this nonsense. Not directly related, but on a brighter note, I've spent 2 weekends at the mountain house since the start of the year, once with my wife and once alone. Both times there was a lot of snow. It was incredibly beautiful and relaxing. Very therapeutic. The place also has good internet service now, thanks Starlink, which is nice. Plus knowing that I can count on David, the property manager, to keep the place in shape, ready for us to visit and to help if we get snowed in, eliminates most of the stress in owning it. My folks have used it a few times as well and get along great with David. Relevant comments. Could you get a restraining order? If they start up again, I do indeed plan to get a restraining order. In fact, my wife made it clear to me she expects a very hard approach to any BS from them going forward, which I agree with, of course. I had the security cameras at our house upgraded at the start of the year just in case they come by. I also kept all their previous texts and provided screenshots to my attorney for safekeeping. If they cause any trouble at the vacation house, they're toast. The sheriff's department and DA's office have the full story and are sympathetic to our situation. $125,000 on credit cards? $125,000 is my estimate based on my sister telling my parents they were racking up at least $3,000 per month just in credit card interest. She thought it might be more. Their credit was already crap before the bankruptcy, so I'm guessing they might be paying as high as 28% interest. If so, they'd owe about $125,000. If they're paying a lower interest rate, the principal would be higher. But yeah, it's an absurd amount, and that $3,000 doesn't include all the other interest they're paying. And of course there's the principal that just sits there. On the other hand, I'm told they had a great time going to Disney World for a week, so there's that. Middle Bill. Younger Bill seems to be more decent than I've given him credit for in the past. I'll admit to a bit of myopia. For years I've seen the 4 of them and their kids as just one mass of inconvenient people I have nothing in common with but can't avoid. But he seems to have hit his limit and made some changes. Hope it works out for him and that he pulls my sister in the right direction. How sisters got so entitled. My sisters and I weren't raised to be like they are. When I was young, they weren't any more self-entitled than any other teenagers. We all worked crappy teenage jobs, didn't get spoiled. It was really a very standard suburban upbringing. We weren't super close, but we weren't enemies. Somewhere along the line after going off to college they changed for the worse. I guess it could be worse. They could have become drug addicts or militant vegan volcano worshippers or whatever. But they sure became people I don't want to be around. And yes, the pool incident was the spark for the meltdown, but the fuel had been accumulating for years. It would have come out at some point that she was renting the house out on the sly and things would have gone to hell then, just like they did now. Update 9. There's been a fair number of requests for an update, and considering it's coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the pool incident, I thought I'd post one. My folks worked through Mom giving my oldest sister her IRA and their emergency fund. Altogether, Mom gave her $45,000. According to Dad, once Mom realized how much she'd been manipulated, she got as mad and upset as he'd ever seen her. I think she had a moment of clarity. She and Dad ended up calling my sisters on a 3-way call, and according to Dad, it went south pretty quickly. Sisters were gaslighting them. Mom lost her cool and ended up ripping into them hard. There were lots of tears and eventually both sisters hung up. Mom really just wanted both sisters to acknowledge that they'd put her and Dad in a risky financial situation. Typical blow-up, I guess, but not the kind of thing that happens in our family. The next morning my dad called my older sister and told her he'd be picking up the car they'd loaned her. She tried to argue, but he told her it wasn't up for discussion. He got a neighbor friend to take him to her house as soon as he hung up and drove it home without talking to her. Sister called and went off on him, said lots of nasty stuff, which of course hurt him. But at least they have the car back. Dad also told me something that left me dumbfounded. For the last 17 years they were giving both sisters a grocery allowance that was up to $500 per month. What the effing F? I'd thought I had a pretty good handle on where their money was going, but clearly I was wrong. This started back when I was going to graduate school and living at home. My sisters asked for the money because they thought it wasn't fair that I was living at home rent-free, and then it just never ended. In any case, my parents cut them off. Unsurprisingly, my sisters weren't happy about it. Who the hell gets an allowance from their parents when they're in their 40s? Because of all this, my folks and sisters quit talking for a while. Don't know if they've resolved everything, but they appear to be on speaking terms again, though my folks aren't having them or the kids over. I'm in don't ask mode. It's their business. My folks are using the vacation home fairly regularly. Currently they're there for a 2-week stay and will probably make it 3. Unfortunately, my wife and I haven't spent any time there lately, other than me having made a couple of day trips to check on it and drop off some supplies. The property manager I hired, David, is still taking good care of the place. Side note, middle sister told my mom that the oldest sister had been making over $6,000 per month renting the house out and that it had been going on for nearly 3 years. Pretty certain she didn't declare the income, so that's like grossing $8,000 to $9,000 per month. I will forever find that galling. Oldest sister and BIL still have their house. My attorney checked up on their bankruptcy case. The court converted it from Chapter 7 to Chapter 13, which I believe means they have to pay back a lot more of their debts. Middle sister and her husband are still separated. I don't know if my middle Bill has had any issues with his security clearance because of breaking into the house. I do know he's still with the same big defense company. At my parents' request, I've been working on putting their house into a trust. They want me to manage their affairs as they get older and keep the house safe from my sisters. I'm working with an attorney, but it's not done yet. Folks have asked me to be the trustee and have also given me full power of attorney. The best part about the last few months is that my sisters, Bills, have left us alone and have stayed away from the vacation home. Wife and I are really happy to be back to our normal lives. Hope everyone else's lives are going great. Update 10, December 14th, 2024. Some folks have asked for an update. Here you go. In August, my attorney let me know he'd received a letter for me from my middle brother-in-law. This was the first contact from any of my sisters or their husbands since they'd been arrested. It was a long letter, had a sincere apology, and a lot of information he thought I should know. Biggest thing was that he and my sister are divorced, not separated. He moved out and filed for divorce right after we made the settlement agreement. He and my middle sister kept it quiet until it was done. Their house sold in June and she's moved to an apartment. He told me that his being arrested last year, along with my other BIL, for breaking into the vacation house could have cost him his job and killed his career, and that it was a huge moment of clarity. He said that the dynamic between the 4 of them, my sisters, him and my oldest sister's husband, had become totally toxic, that they are all borderline alcoholics or worse, and that he had to get away from that environment. He no longer speaks to my oldest sister or her husband. He also asked if he, my dad, and I could meet and have an extended conversation, as there were things he needed to talk about in person. Frankly, I was unenthused, but my wife thought it was worth doing. I asked my dad if he was interested. He was, so I relayed a response to now ex-Bill through my attorney and we met over lunch. We talked for over 2 hours. It was pretty exhausting. Ex-Bill looked better than I'd seen him in, well, forever. He's quit drinking, is in therapy, has lost a lot of weight and looked fit. He was apologetic about all the BS he'd been involved in and apologized to my dad for hiding the divorce. Told us therapy is really helping him. Asked me if the $5,000 he'd sent covered all the damage to the vacation house. I told him it had, and thanked me for talking to the county prosecutor. Said he is strongly considering transferring to a new project that would have him living overseas for the next few years, that he really needed to reset his life but he was trying to balance his mental health against not being part of his kids' lives every day. Ex-Bill also hit us with what for me was quite the WTF. Apparently my sisters have hated me since before I was born, but have always hidden it from the rest of us. They liked things better when there were just the two of them. He said when they drank, which was whenever they were together, my sisters would often bitch about me being the favorite child, how my folks gave me more opportunities than they had, how my doing well was a result of that, and that I didn't deserve my success. None of that made any sense to me or my dad. All three of us went to the same public schools, had dumb part-time jobs, etc. My folks paid for 100% of their college, not mine. I got a full scholarship. I was pretty shocked by this, but my dad was literally speechless. Dad eventually said he had no clue they felt that way as kids and that he and Mom had never favored any of us. He's still having a hard time with this. Personally, I'm embarrassed that I was clueless about it all my life. But it does explain a lot. Ex-Bill warned us that my sisters and remaining BIL intended to put on a full court press to alienate my folks from my wife and me. They also planned to keep the grandkids away from my folks to pressure them. He said that they're still 1000% convinced that my folks are sitting on a ton of money. They want some of it ASAP and are sure I'd stop my folks from giving them anything. That got a laugh out of my dad because he and Mom simply don't have any real money. They do have their house, of course. Ex-Bill also told us that he and my middle sister had rented out the vacation house a total of 6 times over the years. He offered to pay me what they'd made. I declined and told him it was in the past. He also told us my older sister Bill had never declared the income from renting out the vacation house. He did. He didn't want to get in trouble with the IRS. Both my dad and I spoke with ex-Bill separately for a few minutes. Don't know what they talked about. I thanked him for his apology and for making things right financially. Also wished him well and told him I'd be willing to talk with him again down the road. Don't think that's going to happen. I probably could have been more forgiving, but I think he appreciated me not bullshitting him by acting like all this crap hasn't affected my wife and me. There was more, but it's less important and this is too long as it is. After ex-Bill left, I asked my dad if he, Mom and I could sit down and talk about all this. I didn't mean immediately, but that's how he took it. He called Mom and let her know I was coming over, so I rolled with it. She was pretty hurt by my sister's plans to ruin her and Dad's relationship with me and my wife and to use the grandkids as pawns. She cried a lot and wanted to confront them immediately. Dad got her to put a pin in that for a while. Mom was also dumbfounded about me supposedly being the favorite child. She feels like they were actually more strict with me because I had a hard curfew and my sisters didn't. To be honest, I barely remember that. It was 25 years ago. A couple of side notes. Middle sister eventually told our folks she's divorced. She's currently living off child support and her half of the home sale. Supposedly she's trying to find a job. My parents have gone low contact with both sisters. No idea how permanent that is, but Mom seems like she's completely had it with them for the foreseeable future. They're spending a lot of time at the vacation house. We're up there over a month at one point. Ex-Bill found my Reddit posts. He's not terribly happy about them but feels they're more or less accurate, though obviously he found them slanted towards my point of view. He disagreed that he's boring but said to be fair that he finds me boring as well. I can live with that. Our worlds don't have much overlap except my sister. We got the trust set up for my parents' house. I'm the trustee. All this has been emotionally draining for me. I decided it would be a good idea for me to see a therapist again. I've seen one in the past, mainly for stress-related issues. I've been doing so for a while and it's definitely helpful. Therapist tells me my decision to stay no contact with my siblings is healthy for now but also wants me to keep an open mind down the road. My family treats me like a doormat. Now, they are planning a cruise without me and assuming I'd stay behind to babysit their kids. They expected me to watch the kids while they had a good time, even though I, 25F, was not invited to the family cruise. Reddit, hello? Usually, I just read posts and marvel how families can be so cruel to one another. As it happens, I just received a story from my own family that is worth sharing. I need some perspective since for the past week, This has been weighing heavily on my chest. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm a 25-year-old single software developer for a big tech business in Seattle, and it seems like I've been made the family doormat. I got what most people would call a dream job 3 years ago after graduating from college. I've been advancing my career consistently, my work is rewarding and difficult, and my team respects me. However, in my family, I'm simply the one who can be counted on, the person who others turn to when they need assistance, particularly with childcare. Please understand that I adore my nieces and nephews. I've always been available for last-minute babysitting, crises, or any time someone needs a helping hand. Perhaps I erred by being overly approachable and eager to assist. The backstory is as follows. After 40 years of teaching, my 65-year-old Aunt Jean is retiring. She is essentially the matriarch of our family, keeping everyone in touch. She keeps track of all the birthdays, plans every holiday meal, and even sends care packages to the younger cousins when they attend college. She is what keeps us all together. She was the one who gave me care packages filled with my favorite snacks and handwritten encouraging letters during finals week when I was in college. She even assisted me in getting ready for my very first job interview. Her retirement is obviously a huge event, and I was thrilled to join in the celebration, or was, until I learned that I would not be participating. Everything began last week. I had just completed a particularly difficult project at work that involved coordinating a crucial system update and staying late to fulfill deadlines. Despite my fatigue, I continued to have dinner with my family once a week. Since I moved into my own apartment, these dinners have become a ritual, and even when I'm really busy with work, I hardly ever miss one. I brought Mom's favorite bottle of wine when I got to my folks' place. It was an ordinary evening, my sister Rachel, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, looking through her phone, my dad half watching a sporting event on TV, and my mom, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, worrying about what to make. Her 2-year-old was on the floor playing with blocks and would sometimes call out to everyone who passed. We were discussing a variety of topics, including Rachel's toddler's most recent developmental milestone, my most recent professional endeavor, and the customary family rumors. I then asked jokingly if anyone had any suggestions for Aunt Jean's retirement present. I had been considering getting her a unique present, perhaps organizing a collective present with the family. At that moment, Rachel said, "Oh, we're giving her a group gift on the cruise," without even raising her head from her phone. I stopped in the middle of my sentence. What kind of cruise? At first, I believed I had misheard her. I would be aware of any scheduled family vacation, wouldn't I? I mean, I attend every birthday party, holiday celebration, and family get-together. I chuckled uneasily and inquired about her topic. She raised her head, obviously perplexed that I was perplexed. "We've been organizing the cruise for months, you know." As if I were somehow to blame for not knowing about something that no one had thought to tell me, Rachel added, "All the adults in the family are going." I asked my mother for an explanation. When she realizes she's done something wrong but doesn't want to acknowledge it, she gives me this uneasy smile. She clarified. "It's a cruise to celebrate your aunt's retirement, with a few days spent in Hawaii." I had the impression that I was in a strange prank show at the time. I was in the dark about this elaborate excursion, while everyone else was aware of it. Suddenly, the space felt too warm and cramped. My heart was pounding as I struggled to comprehend what was going on. My mother gave me a tense little laugh when I inquired why I hadn't been informed, and then she said, "Well, we thought you'd be more help staying back." "Remaining behind? What can you help with?" I asked, attempting to speak steadily. I had the ideal opportunity to jump in as if it were the most apparent thing in the world when my cousin Madison, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, entered the room with her twins. "The children. It just made sense for you to stay and watch them since you get along so well with them. Let me explain. Madison and Rachel have 4 children under the age of 4. Madison's twins, who are just over a year old, and Rachel's 3 and 2-year-old children. They had somehow determined that I would be more than happy to stay behind and monitor them all without even consulting me. I forgot about my dinner and just stared at them in shock. "So you organized this entire trip without inviting me and just thought I'd be fine staying home to watch the kids?" Rachel finally put her phone down and shrugged. "Yes, indeed. You don't have children or anything that might bind you, and you're always so dependable. It simply made sense." "Made sense to whom?" I looked at my mother as I inquired, hoping for an explanation that wouldn't make me seem like a total afterthought. "We didn't mean to leave you out, honey," she added, smiling weakly at me. "We simply assumed you would comprehend. You have always been the one in charge." The word responsible was like a kick to the face. I've heard that a lot throughout my life, including when I stayed home to assist with family gatherings rather than going out with friends, when I rearranged my college schedule to accommodate Rachel's firstborn, and when I utilized my vacation time to support Madison following her challenging twin pregnancy. When someone needs assistance, I've always been the one to step up. Yes, I have assisted with school pickups, kept the kids during crises, and even filled in for Rachel when she had work-related issues. Rachel had a late meeting last month, so I took a half-day off work to pick up her children from daycare. After the twins began to crawl, I spent 3 weekends the previous month assisting Madison with organizing her home. However, this was really different. They made decisions for me as if my time, my desires, and my life didn't matter. They didn't even have the grace to ask. My mother attempted to patch things up by promising to bring me a memento, as if that would somehow make up for my exclusion. She promised to purchase you a lovely souvenir from Hawaii, as though it would make up for being treated like the family's unpaid babysitter. Meanwhile, Rachel pretended that I was exaggerating. You wouldn't really like the cruise anyhow. I take it that you don't like big crowds? Do you recall how uneasy you felt at Cousin Katie's wedding? Pardon me, as I spoke, I could feel my annoyance building. They were now determining what I would and wouldn't like. I was recuperating from the flu when that wedding took place 5 years ago. However, it seems that one incident had turned into a justification for them to keep me out of family gatherings. I sat there attempting to take it all in. This was intentional, not merely an oversight. They all know that I don't use Facebook, so I wasn't a part of the private Facebook group where they had been organizing this for months. They could have called, texted, or even casually brought it up at any of the numerous family get-togethers we've had, but they chose not to. My mother attempted to sidestep my comments about how painful it was to be left out. We had no intention of upsetting you. It was simply useful, sensible for them. Soon after, I departed because I was too upset to continue the conversation. It was a blur on the way home. Recollections of all the times I had sacrificed everything for them, put their needs ahead of my own, and dropped everything to aid them kept coming back to me, making it difficult for me to concentrate on the road. However, as the days went by, the rage evolved into something more profound. It was more than just the journey. It has to do with how my family perceives me. I don't have any wants, goals, or desires of my own. Simply said, I'm the reliable one, the helper, and the person they can rely on to make sacrifices when it suits them. I've mentally rehearsed the exchange numerous times. I recalled spending the entire night with Rachel during the colic episode of her first child. How I assisted Madison in her quest for strollers and car seats that are suitable for twins. How I've never missed a child's birthday celebration or school function. As I gave it more attention, I came to the conclusion that this wasn't an isolated incident. They have always treated me in this manner. I didn't even realize how frequently my family took advantage of me because I was so ready to support and assist them. But I'm done this time. I'm not sure how I'll deal with this in the future, but I'm definitely not going to stay behind to watch the kids. Not now. Reddit, what are your thoughts? Have you ever found yourself in a comparable circumstance? I'll keep you informed as events develop. First update. Hello everyone. I appreciate all of your encouraging remarks in my earlier post. In the last few days, a lot has transpired, and I must disclose how things have gotten out of hand. I made the decision to make one final attempt to get on the trip after reading your remarks. In the hopes that we could arrange something, I texted my sister Rachel to inquire about going on the trip. Sorry, the cruise is sold out, was her irate reply. We made our reservation months ago, and adding individuals now is not possible. I informed her that I would be prepared to reserve my own cabin independently, even if it meant traveling to Hawaii on my own to meet them there or staying on a different deck. Even though I was still upset over being left out, I was making a sincere effort to be understanding. What did she say? Well, you would have to arrange childcare first if you did come. Everything has already been planned, presuming you will monitor the children. It dawned on me then that they never intended to include me. The explanation about daycare was simply that, an excuse. They had already determined that I would always be the babysitter in this household. I therefore made a choice. I had previously asked for time off for what they believed to be babysitting responsibilities. I choose to take the time off for myself rather than cancel it. A coworker recommended this lovely mountain cabin rental, which I found. It's quiet, remote, has hiking trails, and a hot tub with a view of a valley. I made the reservation right away, packed my things, and departed without informing anyone of my destination. Everything I needed was in the cabin. Just the sound of nature and complete solitude. No Wi-Fi, no cell service until in an emergency. Naturally, my phone was overflowing with texts the morning of their cruise departure before I finally shut it off. Mom. In an hour, we're heading out. When are we able to drop off the children? Rachel. Hey, we're taking the car seats to your apartment. Be prepared. Are you ignoring us? asked Madison. We have to stick to our timetable, therefore this isn't humorous. Mom. Please answer your phone, honey, she said once again. Everyone is waiting. Then the messages became more obscene. Rachel. It's unbelievable how self-centered you are. Our flight is going to be delayed. Madison. This is utterly careless. We had faith in you. I raised you better than this, said Mom. The finest aspect? I had never really received confirmation from them that I would be watching the children. They simply believed that since I've always done it, I would. I'm currently sitting in this serene cottage and taking in the mountain sunset. I feel free for the first time in years. No obligations, no expectations, no last-minute crises to deal with. However, I am aware that this calm is fleeting. I haven't turned on my phone yet, and I can only picture the drama that will be there when I do. I feel bad for finally standing up for myself and upsetting the family dynamic, not for the children, whose care is ultimately the parent's duty. One commenter on my previous piece wrote, "They're not angry because you said no." And it's still on my mind. That struck close to home. They're upset because they can no longer control you. Am I mistaken for prioritizing myself at last? At the very least, should I have informed them that I wouldn't be available? It felt like the only way to let them know I'm serious after years of being taken for granted, even though I realize it wasn't the most mature thing to do. For the next week, I'll be at the cabin. I suppose I'll have to deal with whatever happens after that. Reddit, I appreciate you letting me vent. After I return and have addressed the fallout, I will provide another update. Second update. Hello, Reddit? It took me a while to take in everything that had transpired since my last update. I'm in dire need of some outside insight because things have become worse. Do you recall that quiet cabin I told you about? Those 7 days changed my life. I read books I had been intending to read for years in the afternoons, hiked misty trails in the mornings, and soaked in the hot tub under the stars at night. I felt what it was like to not be at someone's mercy for the first time in my adult life. I found myself thinking back on my relationship with my family while I was there. Rachel needed assistance moving houses last December, so I had to postpone a big certification exam that would have furthered my profession. That weekend, she said, no one else could help her. My siblings gave me plain gift cards, saying they were too busy to shop properly, while I used my entire Christmas bonus the month before to buy presents for all the kids. Madison argued that she had no one else to care for the twins, so I was unable to attend my closest friend's bachelorette party earlier last year. The pattern remained constant. Their demands came first, then mine. But when I got home, the real drama began. Do you recall how I shut down my phone? I had hundreds of voicemails, more than 100 text messages, and 47 missed calls waiting for me. It included everything from threats to guilt tripping. Do you realize we could have called the police for child abandonment? Was the most memorable message from my cousin Madison. They were meant to be your responsibility. What I was reading was unbelievable. You never agreed to watch children, so how can you leave them? I wanted to handle this ridiculous threat, so I contacted her back right away. When she answered, I exclaimed, "You can't be serious. If someone refuses to accept a responsibility, you cannot report them for it." She gave a frightening reaction. "You were the reason we had to postpone our entire trip. Are you aware of the amount of money we lost? You were meant to be with the children." "Assumed to be? By whom?" I retorted. "I was never asked. You all made the decision for me." She continued talking about my responsibilities to my family and how I had failed them. She then revealed yet another shocking revelation. "I've already spoken with my legal pal. What you did can be regarded as careless." I lost it at that point. "Your lawyer buddy needs to advise you that before accusing someone of ignoring a duty, you must obtain their real consent. I have no formal authority to make medical choices for your children, and my apartment isn't even child-proofed. Have you considered that?" She ended the call. Then Rachel's flurry of messages arrived. It seems that she was so stressed that she was only able to enjoy half of the cruise and had to leave her children with a neighbor. She wrote, "You've ruined Aunt Jean's retirement celebration completely. You chose to be selfish, which affected everyone's trip. All of this came at an especially difficult time because, just last month, none of my family members were available to drive me home from a minor medical procedure. Madison was preoccupied with her daily schedule, and Rachel had an important hair appointment. In the end, I had to pay for a ride-sharing service. Although more subdued, my mother's strategy was just as deceptive. Presumably assuming I couldn't avoid her at work, she called me. Her voice was brimming with disappointment as she started, "Your sister had to cut her trip short. Madison's non-refundable reservations cost them hundreds of dollars. Do you truly want to be this person?" I inhaled deeply before answering. Mom, is this more about what you all want me to be or about what I want to be? What is the intended meaning of that? She inquired. It indicates that I'm sick of being used as the family's unpaid babysitter. None of you even take into consideration the fact that I have my own life, work, and aspirations. She emphasized, we are family. Families support one another. Mom, help is something that is freely given. You're referring to obligation here. In addition, when was the last time I received assistance from any member of this family? The ensuing stillness was telling. The intriguing part, though, is that my sister chose to make this public. On Facebook, she has been making ambiguous and hostile status updates about toxic family members and others who don't respect family values. The irony is that our extended family members are making comments like, some people forget where they came from, and blood is thicker than water. I was initially turned away from the family cruise by these same individuals. My cousin even went so far as to email me a detailed list of all the fees they incurred due to my selfish behavior, including additional daycare charges, travel changes, and cruise tickets. She is requesting that I pay them back because, presumably, their careless planning has made me financially liable. A friend of mine who is a legal, not simply a buddy who knows a lawyer, burst out laughing when I showed her these messages. She asserted, they cannot force you to pay for plans you never accepted. None of this operates that way. I've learned a valuable lesson from the entire situation. This goes beyond childcare or a vacation. It involves years of abusing my kindness and using my time and effort as a resource to which they are legally entitled. I've always had some emergency that needed my attention whenever I've attempted to plan for myself. Rachel had joined a book club, so last spring when I wanted to take a photography class, I ended up spending those evenings watching the kids. This summer, Madison needed assistance with the twins when her husband was gone on business, so I had to postpone our planned weekend getaway with friends. To help me deal with all of this, I've started going to a therapist. She noted that my family's response, the threats, the humiliation in front of others, and the financial demands, are all indications that someone they're used to controlling is losing control. Aunt Jean has been the sole bright point in all of this. I was moved to tears by her remarks when she called me yesterday. I had no idea they excluded you like this. I would have stopped it right away if I had known. Family isn't meant to be like this. However, even her encouragement cannot make up for the hurt I feel when I realize how my family truly views me. I'm their safety net, their backup plan, and their free babysitting service, not their sister, daughter, or cousin. Going forward, I know I must establish clear boundaries, but I'm having trouble figuring out what those boundaries should entail. There's a part of me that wants to stop communicating altogether, at least temporarily. Even thinking about that makes another area feel bad. Reddit, what are your thoughts? With family members that don't even grasp the idea of boundaries, how can you set them? Have any of you had a similar situation? Third update. This will be my last update on the situation. Reddit. In light of the trip and the turmoil that followed, I've had to make some tough but essential choices regarding my relationship with my family going forward. These last few weeks have been life-changing. Now that I'm not always on call for family problems, my professional life has dramatically transformed. I am now in charge of a significant project. Last week, my manager even took me aside and remarked, "You seem like a completely different person. Your energy and focus have significantly increased." Until they were gone, I was unaware of how much my family responsibilities were impeding my career. I finally had the chat I had been dreading last night. I gave my mother a call. Since I still adore her in spite of everything, I knew she would be the most difficult to deal with. However, love is insufficient to excuse their treatment of me. Her voice was instantly eager as she responded. "I'm so happy you phoned, honey. Let's move on from this, shall we? I want to stop fighting now." I said in a firm voice, "Mom, this isn't a fight. This is my way of telling you that I need a lot of space." "What is meant by that?" Her voice changed from one of hope to one of worry. "It implies that I can't continue in this manner. I can't be a part of a family that doesn't respect me, even though I love you. Whenever I attempt to defend myself, I encounter manipulation, accusations, and guilt tripping." A few weeks ago, I would have been devastated when she began to cry. "So what? Are you simply going to leave me? From your sister? From everybody?" "Yes, if that's what it takes to keep my peace." From there, the discussion took a turn for the worse. She employed all of her strategies, including money manipulation. "Remember who helped with your first apartment deposit? Guilt about the children. They ask about their aunt every day. And even bringing up dad's health. This stress isn't good for his heart." The most painful part was when she mentioned my early years. She said, "I gave up everything for you. To raise you, I put my career on hold. I didn't miss the irony of her exploiting her own decisions to blame me for mine. But I held my ground for the first time. I clarified that although I would continue to send birthday cards to the children, I would require total separation from the family's adults for the foreseeable future. What is the foreseeable future duration? She insisted. For however long it takes for me to recover and for everyone to realize that I'm more than just the family's babysitter. She ended the call. Instead of feeling sad as I had anticipated, I felt lighter. I adopted a more straightforward strategy with my sister and cousin. I disabled their social media profiles and phone numbers. I went through all of the family group conversations on my phone and unsubscribed. In addition to unfollowing them on social media, I modified my email filters so that their messages are sent to a different folder that I may review whenever I'm ready. There has been a noticeable shift in my day-to-day existence. I used to be so worried about missing an emergency call from my sister or cousin that I would continuously check my phone. My phone isn't tied to incessant demands from my family anymore. It's just a phone. I've begun taking back my weekends. I joined a local hiking club last Saturday to tackle a strenuous trail that I've always wanted to experience. I spent 6 hours going to a stunning top with like-minded individuals rather than watching my nieces and nephews. Next weekend, we intend to go hiking again. The class I mentioned on photography? Everything is going remarkably well. I have a natural eye for composition, according to my instructor, and I'm already organizing a picture show with several of my classmates for the spring of next year. When I was at everyone's mercy, I would never have had the chance to take advantage of these kinds of possibilities. Additionally, I've resumed dating, which was previously nearly difficult. It's incredible how much more appealing you seem to possible partners when you don't have to keep postponing arrangements to deal with family crises. Aunt Jean is the only person I continue to communicate with. She confirmed everything I've been feeling when she contacted me this morning. She added that she had experienced a similar situation with her own sister years prior, which helped me feel less alone in this choice. Walking away from people who don't value you, even if they are family, is sometimes the strongest thing you can do. I've learned from my therapist that this is about taking back my identity, not just about establishing boundaries. I've spent so much time being the family helper, the responsible one, and the dependable one. Now, I'm free to discover who I am without those titles. Yes, there are times when I miss them, like when I walk past my niece's favorite park or see something that would make them laugh. The cruise situation, however, comes to mind, as they were prepared to deny me a family celebration while still requiring me to give up my time for their convenience. Before, I never felt comfortable starting a 5-year plan for myself. I'm considering working part-time while pursuing my master's degree. My manager is very supportive of the tuition reimbursement program offered by my company. In addition, I'm saving for that springtime vacation to Europe by myself, which would not have been feasible when I was continuously devoting my time and resources to family responsibilities. My mental health has changed in the most unexpected way. I no longer experience the same level of continual anxiousness. I eat healthier, sleep better, and have even begun working out on a regular basis. You have an incredible amount of energy when you're not always running other people's lives. In response to inquiries in my previous post, I can confirm that I am still employed and have accepted a team lead position on a new project. My coworkers have seen how I've changed. You smile more now, one of them remarked. I was unaware of how obvious my attention had been to other people. Cutting off my family in this way may seem harsh to some of you. Perhaps I am. However, this seems to be the only option after years of being neglected, having my needs and wants disregarded, and being treated more like a service than a human being. I have no idea what the future will bring. They might realize why I had to do this at some point. They might not. However, I'm prioritizing myself for the first time in my adult life, and it feels good. I appreciate all of your help along the way, Reddit. Your feedback and personal stories gave me the courage to make this choice. I'm ready to conclude this chapter and concentrate on creating my own novel, so this will be my final update. My mom remarried, brought in her husband and stepdaughter, who insulted me and damaged my things. Now, they seized my house during my trip. It never occurred to me, 27 degrees Fahrenheit, that I would write an article like this, yet here we are. It all began when I was seated in our living room and informed by my parents that they were divorcing. I was already living with them, saving money, and working a regular office job. There was no fighting or yelling during the divorce. It was just two people who had grown apart and had different goals in life. I think I handled it quite well because I had anticipated it. They were living parallel lives under one roof, and family dinners had grown infrequent. I continued our pizza and sci-fi movie habit by spending every other weekend with Dad, 59 million, who moved to an apartment across town. A year after the divorce, Mom, 59F, met my now stepfather, 57M, and everything changed drastically. One morning, she was so excited that she virtually floated home. She declared, "I've met someone special," during breakfast. "He has a daughter in college. Wouldn't it be nice to have a sister?" My stepfather and his daughter, 21F, came into our home after they were married in a matter of months. Everything began to come apart at that point. When grown-ups were present, my stepsister might have looked like an angel in her expensive clothing, but when they weren't, she was someone else. Little things were the first. The laundry would destroy my preferred work outfits. Coffee stains would inexplicably appear on important documents. My personal belongings would disappear and then reappear damaged. Even worse was my stepfather, who was often making disparaging comments about my lifestyle, appearance, and professional choices. "Don't you think that skirt's a bit short for the office?" he'd respond. Or, "Maybe if you spent less time on your phone and more time networking, you'd have a better position by now." I attempted to discuss these experiences with Mom, but she consistently dismissed my worries. She'd remark, "He's just being protective. He wants what's best for you." Over time, everything became too much to handle. I had spent weeks honing every element of a pivotal presentation while staying late at work. When I arrived home early one evening, I discovered my stepsister purposely destroying my presentation materials in my room. She had ruined my work with markers, leaving her hands smeared with ink. Things became heated when I confronted her and presented Mom and my stepfather with the evidence. The worst part? My stepfather accused me of mistreating his precious daughter, and called me a stupid. As if I were the one causing the trouble, Mom simply sat there and shook her head at me. I had trouble sleeping that night. I had made up my mind by dawn. Dad arrived to fetch me up 20 minutes after I called him. Mom came out to object as I was packing my things into his truck. She remarked, "You're overreacting? Why can't you just try to get along?" I looked over at her. "Your husband called me a fool, and you sat there silently. Your stepdaughter destroyed my work, and you did nothing. That's not overreacting, that's self-preservation." When Dad heard this, he went up to my stepfather. Security had to step in before things were physical since it heated up so quickly. It was like inhaling fresh air after being submerged when I finally moved in with Dad. It's time to stop being cautious. No more looking for sabotage in my room. A few days later, I received a note from Mom. "I can't believe you set your father against my husband like this. You're tearing this family apart." I didn't answer. Which family was she referring to? The one where I was verbally abused by her husband? Where did her stepdaughter ruin my belongings? I concentrated on my work and saving money rather than obsessing over it. I brought meals from home, while my coworkers went out for fancy lunches. I stayed late and took on more work when others went out to bars after work. I contribute a sizable amount of my monthly salary to my future home fund. I eventually purchased a home with 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen with granite countertops, and a backyard where I could grow a garden after 3 years of diligent saving. It was all mine, purchased with my own funds after years of diligent effort and cautious saving. I made the decision to throw a housewarming celebration, and I made it clear that Mom could attend. But not my stepsister or stepfather. She concurred. On the day of the party, however, they were all present when I opened the door. "Surprise?" Mom whispered feebly, observing my face. As soon as he saw the hardwood flooring and crown molding, my stepfather began to critique everything, his lips quivering. His statement, "It's nice," sounded anything but. With her nose in the air, my stepsister walked around teasingly about how little the kitchen was and how she would purchase a larger home with a swimming pool. I was done. "Really? That's interesting. What job are you planning to buy it with?" She flushed. "I have prospects." When I said, "Prospects aren't paychecks. Last I heard, you were still living off your dad's credit card." My stepfather took a menacing stride forward as his face grew scarlet with anger. Mom gave me a pitying glance over her shoulder as she swiftly escorted them out after grabbing his arm. I was trembling with rage as they went, but I also felt oddly relieved. At last, I had confronted them, in my own house, according to my own rules. My true friends joined me in celebrating my accomplishment as the celebration went on. I had assumed that would be the end of it, but I had no idea that things would grow much worse. I have to go to work now, so I'll update this post tomorrow with what transpired. Is it wrong of me to confront them? In my opinion, they showed up to disparage all I've worked so hard for even though they weren't invited. First update? Since then, a lot has transpired, and I feel uneasy about my present circumstances. I had an opportunity when my supervisor called me into his office 3 months after the housewarming catastrophe. For a 2-week absence, Our organization needed someone to manage a significant project at another branch. My house, especially my indoor garden, was my biggest worry, even though it was a fantastic opportunity for my job. Delicate orchids, temperamental peace lilies, and my pride and joy, a rare bird of paradise that had just begun to flower, were among the many plants I had grown during the previous few months. I couldn't stomach the idea of going back to dead plants, and each one required a different kind of care. I swallowed my pride and drove to Mom's house after weighing my options. I knew she had a green thumb, but we hadn't talked much since the housewarming incident. In addition, I believed that this might be an opportunity to mend our relationship, just Mom and me, without the involvement of my stepsister or stepfather. When I showed up at her house, she appeared astonished. "Is everything all right?" She ushered me into the kitchen and asked. I asked if she could take care of my house, especially the plants, and explained about the business trip. I should have known something was wrong because of the way her face lit up. "Obviously, with nearly too much enthusiasm," she said. "You are aware of my passion for gardening." I gave her the extra keys and thorough instructions on how to take care of each plant. She tucked the papers away after giving them a fleeting glance. She said, "Don't worry about anything. Simply concentrate on your work. Everything will be well taken care of by me." I dismissed it as my own paranoia, but there was something strange about her actions. What could go wrong after all? I thought she was just observing my plants. I told her my itinerary and emergency contacts before I left. I reminded her that I would be gone for 2 weeks. According to the schedule I jotted down, the plants just require water. Please don't invite anyone over or adjust anything. Although she gave a nod, I couldn't exactly read her face. Obviously, honey, everything will be all right. The fact that she had consented so fast in spite of our previous arguments, that she had hardly looked at the care instructions, and that she kept saying, "Everything will be fine," without addressing the plants directly, were all small details that I began to notice while I was driving home. That night, I double-checked every item in my home. Just in case, I snapped pictures of every room in my house. Despite feeling bad about not trusting my own mother, I even put a tiny security camera in my living room. I noticed Mom's car go by my street the following morning as I was packing my bags to go to the airport. She drove by carefully, as if she was checking something, without stopping or waving. She said she was merely running errands in the area when I later called her about it. I'm now writing this from my downtown hotel room. Even if the project is going well, I still feel nervous. Mom's behavior during our check-in calls has been odd. No matter what time of day I call, she always appears to be at my house. I hear strange background noises, such as TV sounds and clinking plates, which shouldn't be present if she's just dropping over to water some plants. She immediately shifted the topic when I inquired about my bird of paradise. "Everything is all right. Try not to worry too much. Simply concentrate on your work." I tried to view the stream from my security camera, but it appears to have been disconnected. While watering plants, Mom says she unintentionally knocked out the cord and was unable to figure out how to plug it back in. Tonight, I spoke with Dad over the phone about my worries. He believes I'm being overly suspicious, but he also brought up Mom's behavior at the housewarming celebration. "My dear," he replied, "keep your eyes wide open. Have faith in your instincts. Even though I still have a week left, I'm thinking of shortening my trip. Am I going overboard? I simply hope I'm mistaken about everything right now." Second update. Well, that was far worse than I had anticipated. Things started to get pretty strange during my second week here, with excuses like, "in the middle of something," or "can't talk right now, everything's fine." My mom stopped returning my calls on a daily basis and instead started texting me back. I heard several people in the background when she finally picked up, including what sounded strangely like my stepsister's chuckle. The social media posts followed. Since I have blocked my stepsister, I don't typically check her accounts, but I received screenshots from a coworker who follows her. Selfies that she posted from what was obviously my kitchen were there. One caption said, "I love my new granite countertops." She was seen relaxing on my couch in another. "Watch Netflix while relaxing in my new living room." I was feeling nauseous. She had been posting these for days, according to the timestamps. She responded with heart emojis and the following when her pals inquired about her new location. "I finally found my ideal home." I tried contacting Mom again right away. Directly to voicemail, I dialed the phone of my stepfather. Blocked. Even my stepsister blocked me when I attempted to phone her. I called my neighbor next door in a desperate attempt to get help. She hesitated before answering, "Oh yes. Over the past week, I've observed your sister moving things. I assumed you were aware. According to your mother, you were allowing her to stay while she recovered. I could hardly hold the phone because my hands were shaking so much. Dad was furious when I called him. "Take the next flight back home," he said. "I'll see you over there." I was able to reserve a red-eye flight, which landed shortly after midnight. The first thing I noticed when the Uber dropped me off at my house, the house I had worked so hard to purchase, was that all of the drapes had been altered. I could see strange decorations and furniture through the windows. I tried my key in the lock with shaking hands. It refused to turn. I made another attempt, this time with more caution. Nothing. Suddenly, the key that had suited my own house perfectly no longer did. At that moment, I heard footsteps strolling around my house as if they were supposed to be there. The door opened before I could call 911, and my stepsister appeared, dressed in pajamas as if she owned the house. She dared to appear irritated at my presence, and her blonde hair was in an untidy bun. "Why are you in this place?" My brain was having trouble processing what I was witnessing, so I said the words in a whisper. "Obviously, living here," she grinned. "I've been here for several weeks. While you were off playing businesswoman, Daddy helped me move in." With my suitcase still in hand, I stood there feeling angry. "This is my home. Leave. Right now." She studied her manicured nails while leaning against my doorframe. "Yes, that isn't taking place. I feel very at ease here. By the way, the water pressure in the bathroom is fantastic. Acquire. Outside. Of course, my own home." Every word had enough edge to pierce. In reaction, she slammed the door in my face and laughed, really laughed. The latch clicked, and then I heard her footsteps as she left. With my bags all about me, I stood on my own front porch, shaking with anger. The flower beds I had meticulously arranged were illuminated by the yard lights I had put. I could see my living room through the glass, but it was no longer my living room. She tossed her jacket over my couch. My hardwood floors were littered with her shoes. I took out my phone and dialed Mom, my hands shaking. She sounded sleepy as she heard the third ring. "What's the matter? What's the matter?" I nearly let out a yell. "I just got home to find my stepsister living in my house. She says she's been here for weeks. Tell her to get out right now, or I'm calling the police." "Don't contact the police, please." Mom's voice changed from drowsy to frantic. "We'll be over. Just wait there, please. What other place should I go? I can't get out of my own home." The next half hour was the longest I've ever experienced. I watched the lights in the houses next to mine turn on as I paced back and forth on my front porch. Seeing me out here in the middle of the night, what did they think? A few automobiles passed slowly, perhaps debating whether to make their own police call. At last, Mom's vehicle arrived, driven by my stepfather. Still wearing their jammies beneath their coats, they hurried out. "What's happening?" I confronted Mom and made a demand. "Why is my stepsister in possession of my house keys? Why do you allow her to reside here?" At least Mom had the grace to appear uneasy. "She needed a place to stay, honey. She was unable to pay the rent increase when her lease expired. Your home was just sitting there, unoccupied." "Just sitting there? Vacant?" "It's my home. You weren't entitled." As if it clarified everything, Mom added, "The girl needed somewhere to live. Anyway, your house is too large for one person." I kept my eyes on my mother's face, hoping for some recognition of how totally she had violated my confidence. Rather, she only stood there, offering justifications for the unacceptable. As always when I was younger, my stepfather went forward with his chest puffed out. "Look, telling you about her moving in was pointless. You would have simply refused?" "I would have said no, of course. I can't even enter my own home since the locks have been changed." "Anyway, they needed to be changed," he replied, dismissively waving his hand. "I was kind to you." I gaped at him in shock. "You know that's against the law, don't you? Changing the locks on someone else's property is not an option." He sneered. "Legal, illegal. It's finished now. This house is too large for just you, and she needs somewhere to stay." I whispered, lowering my voice to a perilous whisper. "Get her out. Get her out of here or I'll call the cops." That recognizable sneer twisted my stepfather's cheeks. "You're not going to do it." Mom moved forward, her hands clenched. "That's it if you call the police. I'll never talk to you again. Do you want it that way? To utterly ruin this family?" I let forth a rough, acrid laugh. "This family? Do you mean the time you allowed your husband to occupy my home without permission? That household?" Rather than answer, they turned and left me there with my bags as they entered my house. With a last click, the door shut behind them. As I took out my phone, my hand stopped shaking. Don't hesitate any longer. No more attempting to maintain harmony. Even though Dad believes I made the correct decision, I can't get Mom's vow to never talk to me again out of my mind. Third update. When I dialed 911, things proceeded swiftly. 2 police cars with bright lights arrived in less than 20 minutes. I told the officers what was going on, and the neighbors were clearly awake now, watching from behind their curtains. "Are you the legitimate owner?" the officer inquired. Using my phone, I retrieved the property records and screenshots of my stepsister's social media posts demonstrating her move into her new place. I said, "Yes, I do have all the paperwork." I gave my mother a key so she could water my plants while I was gone on business. Rather, they changed all the locks and moved my stepsister in. The doorbell was rung by the officer. After a long silence, there were shuffles coming from within. The door opened at last. As they stood there, my mother, stepfather, and stepsister made a vain attempt to project confidence. "Good evening," said the cop. "Everyone inside must provide identification and proof of residency." My stepfather took the stage, speaking in his most convincing business voice. "There was a miscommunication. My daughter is permitted to remain here by my stepdaughter. She is attempting to stir trouble after they had a falling out." "That is untrue," I interrupted. "I never granted authorization. While I was out on business, they exploited me." "Inquire about the locks. They will acknowledge that they altered them without telling me." The first thing my stepfather said was, "The old locks were defective." "You admit that you changed the locks without the homeowner's consent?" The officer paused to take notes. My stepsister came forward, dread taking the place of her previous arrogance. "Daddy assured me things would be all right. He claimed that after she grew accustomed to the concept, she wouldn't mind. Changing locks on someone else's property and occupying their home without permission constitutes illegal entry," the officer replied, glaring at my stepfather. "We will need to request that you and your daughter visit the station." Mom burst into tears. "This is simply a family issue, please. We can resolve this. Your husband and stepdaughter have admitted to changing locks and occupying property without the owner's consent," the officer sternly retorted. "It is illegal to do so." After that, everything occurred pretty fast. As they escorted my stepsister to the patrol car, she began to cry. For the first time, my stepfather remained silent despite his fury turning his face crimson. As they took her husband and daughter away, Mom shook on the porch. I called an emergency locksmith with the authorities' assistance, and he came an hour later. Mom eventually spoke as he sought to get me back into my own house. "How were you able to?" She hardly raised her voice above a whisper. "How could you harm your own family in this way?" Looking at her, this lady who had spent years choosing everyone else over me, I felt oddly at ease. "You stated long ago that they were your true family, Mom," I murmured softly. "You sat there silently the day she ruined my work presentation. The day you turned away when he called me derogatory names. They treated me like trash every time you told me to be the bigger person. They were the ones you repeatedly selected. They will now have criminal histories?" she cried. "Was it what you were looking for?" I answered, "I wanted my mother to protect me. My goal was to feel secure in my own house. The only thing I wanted was for you to pick me." After completing his task, the locksmith gave me the replacement keys. I tested them in the lock as Mom watched. "From now on, you are no longer my daughter," she declared, her voice trembling with rage. "You have no right to ruin our family in this way." For the last time, I looked at her. "The day you decided that your new spouse and his daughter were more significant than your own child, you ruined our family. I just quit allowing you all to mistreat me." She climbed into her vehicle and drove off. I entered my home, my transformed, violated home. All of my lovely plants had died from carelessness. My beloved bird of paradise was also wilted and brown. My stepsister had filled my cabinets with her belongings and reorganized everything in the kitchen. Designer clothes were all over my spare bedroom, which had been transformed into her personal closet. Later that day, the police made a call. They wanted to know whether I would file a complaint. I considered forgiveness, family loyalty, and Mom's tears. Then I recalled being gaslighted, abused, and told to just take it. "Yes," I firmly said. "I wish to file charges." In a frightening email, my stepfather threatened to sue me for his daughter's psychological suffering. Without replying, I sent it to my attorney. On social media, my stepsister made evasive posts about toxic people who pretend to be victims, but I suppressed her accounts. Over the weekend, I thoroughly cleaned my house to remove any evidence of their presence. I started over after discarding the dead plants. I installed better cameras and changed all the security codes with the help of Dad and his girlfriend. Mom sent one last text last night, saying, "I hope you're happy with what you've done. I blocked her number since you've ruined everything." Fourth update. A lot has transpired since my last update, which was a few months ago. The court case proceeded more quickly than anticipated. Rather than risk a trial, both my stepsister and my stepfather accepted plea agreements. They were both placed on probation and mandated to reimburse me for the expense of replacing the locks and for the damage they caused to my residence. Above all, they have a legal obligation to avoid my property. In court, my stepsister attempted to play the victim by claiming that she was only doing what her father had told her to do and was unaware that it was against the law. The judge was unimpressed, particularly after seeing her boastful social media posts about her new house. Until the very end, my stepfather remained haughty, accusing his lawyer of being spiteful and disrespectful. Mom attended the court sessions, but she sat beside them. She never gave me a glance. She made an attempt to approach me in the parking lot following the sentencing. "Are you happy now?" she inquired. "Your stepsister has a criminal record because of you. Is this retaliation?" I felt nothing except sympathy when I looked at her, actually looked at her. "Mom, this is not retaliation. This is the result. They moved in without my consent after breaking into my house and changing my locks. How could that be acceptable?" As usual, Mom said, she needed a place to stay. I answered, "Then you ought to have allowed her to remain with you. Or assisted her in locating a residence of her own. You decided to steal mine instead." As she normally does when she loses an argument, she breaks down in tears. "You have my undying forgiveness for this. This family has been ripped apart by you." I maintain my composure. "No, Mother. When you decided that their enjoyment was more important than my well-being years ago, you tore this family apart. I'm just at last advocating for myself. I ran into my aunt at the grocery store last week. She made an effort to guilt-trip me by claiming that Mom was having trouble adjusting to our distance from one another and that I ought to try to make amends. I informed her that some bridges must remain burned. I'm getting better sleep now. The more time passes, the less I anxiously check my phone for alerts from my new security system. The sunlight coming through my windows is helping my new plants grow. I'm going to see Dad and his girlfriend next month, and they call frequently. Out of habit, I occasionally find myself reaching for the phone to contact Mom, but the temptation is quickly squelched when I recall that night on my doorstep when I was locked out of my own house. My mother passed away years ago when she decided to prioritize her new family over me, so losing her isn't the worst part. Accepting that she will never comprehend what she did wrong is the most difficult aspect. In his last threatening email, my stepfather discussed family loyalty and how I had betrayed them through his attorney. One word was my lawyer's response. Family loyalty should have started with respecting my client's property rights. I've changed my phone number, installed cameras throughout my house, and blocked them on all platforms. This may seem extreme to others, but I'm not taking any chances in light of what they did. I've decided to sever all communication with them. Life continues. Last week, I received a promotion at work. The plants they killed are being replaced by new ones, and my garden is growing again. I recently started seeing someone who respects my limits and is aware of my trust concerns. There are some bridges that must remain burned. Sometimes severing links is the only healthy option, not just a choice. This is going to be my last update on the matter. It's time to put this chapter behind me and concentrate on starting a new life. A life free of poisonous relatives. Without being overly cautious. Without sacrificing my personal limits for those who have never honored them. I am at liberty. Caught my wife cheating, moved on, and found new love, until my ex tried to run over me and my new girlfriend in a jealous rage. I've been a lurker on Reddit for a while, but today I finally have a story to tell. Since my life has been so chaotic, I haven't had time to write about it, let alone breathe, even though I've wanted to post this for months. I can now talk about what occurred to me now that everything has been resolved, and perhaps it will assist someone else avoid a similar circumstance. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm a 36-year-old man who married a 35-year-old woman named Carolyn for what I believe to be eternity. In the end, I will never be able to reclaim those 6 years of my life. At least I kept telling myself that our marriage wasn't awful. When we connected on Instagram, I truly believed I had struck gold. She seemed ideal, humorous, and beautiful. My early years were quite chaotic, so I was especially alert for warning signs. My dad was the victim of severe abuse from my mom, who would yell matches at 3 in the morning, throw plates all over the room, and basically take everything because he loved us and didn't want to leave. You can know that when I was dating Carolyn, I was constantly on guard. I spent 2 years scrutinizing every aspect of her life, including how she handled money, stress, and waiters, basically, everything you should look for before committing to someone. To be completely honest, she aced every test. She was compassionate, tolerant, and giving, qualities my mother lacked. I believed I had done my research, thoroughly examined her, and discovered a decent woman. I even recall telling my closest friend that I had finally ended my family's abusive cycle. I was mistaken about that one, man. But I'll talk about that later. We got married in a gorgeous ceremony, purchased a charming suburban home, and began what I hoped would be our happily ever after. I had no idea that I was about to enter a nightmare, albeit a distinct one from the one I had known growing up. About 2 years in, everything started to go south. I mean extremely south. Every month, like clockwork, we had huge blowout fights instead of being the couple everyone envied. It was also constantly over the most ridiculous stuff, like the dishes in the sink, my late work, her hanging out with her friends, or even the TV shows we watched. I really thought we could work things out, so I was working so hard to keep our marriage intact. This was the woman who would surprise me with weekend excursions and leave small messages in my lunchbox. How we had gone from that to her yelling at me because I had purchased the incorrect brand of coffee was beyond me. I recommended couples therapy because I'm the kind of man who thinks things should be fixed rather than thrown away. In fact, I pleaded for it. We attended exactly one session, and holy hell, what a fiasco that proved to be. Carolyn replied, "It's your idea, so it's your expense." So I selected a really competent therapist who specialized in married couples, scheduled all the meetings, and even paid for it out of my own pocket. The therapist began highlighting some communication problems and raising the possibility that Carolyn wasn't managing conflict in a healthy way. She cried uncontrollably, said the therapist was assaulting her, and vowed never to return. I was attempting to make her look crazy, she continued, calling the therapist a quack. I later learned that her father had passed away just before our arguments became increasingly heated. Grief does strange things to people, so I tried to be understanding, but she refused to talk about it, refused to receive assistance, and continued to get angrier and more aloof. Her yelling battles could wake up the entire neighborhood, but she never got physical or broke anything. On one occasion, our neighbors believed someone was being murdered and phoned the police. Carolyn was shouting at me because I had neglected to get her dry cleaners. We eventually settled into this strange pattern in which we essentially just shared a room and occasionally had sex. We would get up, leave for work, return home, have dinner while watching television, and then retire to bed. Repeat after rinsing. We hardly spoke anymore, which is the only reason the fights decreased in frequency. But I was still foolishly in love with her. That's sad, isn't it? I kept reminiscing about our early years, telling myself that we could return there with enough effort. I firmly believed in the for better or worse part of our marriage vows. I suppose I overlooked the fact that those vows also included forsaking all others. I'll get to that part though. I was brought up to believe that marriage is holy, so perhaps I should have recognized the warning signs. You stick it out and work on it unless someone is being hit or cheated on. It turns out that I was unaware of one of those deal breakers that was about to happen. Allow me to explain how everything went wrong. I work at this dull corporate job, nothing special, just your average mid-level job, pushing papers and going to meetings all day. The kind where you're not important enough to fly first class, but you're important enough to travel. I had been dispatched to a business expo in a different state, where I was expected to spend 4 days networking with potential clients and acting as though I was interested in PowerPoint presentations. My life chose to take a huge turn for the worse at this point. Our firm back home experienced a serious issue 3 days into the expo, something involving servers crashing and losing customer data, the usual corporate emergency fare. Everyone was called back early by my supervisor. I quickly reserved the first trip home because I'm the devoted worker that I am, or perhaps I'm just a fool, you decide. I was thinking of this lovely, dumb concept. Do you remember the romantic reunions in films where the husband surprised his wife? Yes, I did believe that would occur. I planned this surprise during my whole Uber trip from the airport. I stopped at a posh florist and spent $80 on her favorite flowers, which were pricey purple orchids that she always said brought back memories of our first date. I even got her some champagne and some of her favorite high-end chocolates. I believed that this might be a new beginning for us. I thought that this impromptu gesture would remind her of the reasons she fell in love with me in the first place, since we had been acting so distant lately. With my chocolates and flowers, I felt like the greatest husband in the world when I arrived home at 2 p.m. Her car was in the driveway, which made sense because she worked from home on Thursdays, and the house appeared to be typical. However, I recall a few strange things, such as her favorite playlist playing from upstairs, which she only ever listened to when she was feeling particularly upbeat. Though I assume she had a buddy over for lunch or something, there were 2 wine glasses in the sink. God, I was such a fool. I was so eager to surprise her that I went right upstairs to our bedroom. Although I could hear other sounds and the music was growing louder, my brain was not comprehending what they meant. Do you remember the scene in horror films where everyone yells at the character to keep the door closed? That character was me. My world fell apart when I pulled open the door to my own bedroom and turned the doorknob. That 1 second turned every single pleasant memory, trusting moment, and I love you into ash. I will never be able to forget what I witnessed in that bedroom until the day I die. Beneath some strange guy in our bed was my wife, the person I had loved, supported and built a life with for 6 years. The same bed where I had hugged her after her father passed away, and where we had discussed having children in the future. She was acting as though I didn't exist and that our marriage meant nothing at all, not even attempting to keep quiet about it. As I stood there, a total moron, watching the flowers I had purchased fall to the ground and scurry like cockroaches when the lights are turned on. The man had the audacity to try to scurry past me like I was a doorman, and I will never forget this. I lost it while he was fumbling to put on his clothing and strewing things all over the place. Something inside of me shattered. Perhaps because I saw him with my wife or because he believed he could simply walk away from ruining my marriage. My hand was around his throat before I even realized what I was doing. It wasn't a death grip, but it was a clear signal that he wasn't simply leaving. Instead of hitting him as you might think, I gave him 2 open-handed slaps across his face, resembling a dramatic housewife from a soap show. I'm still baffled as to why I didn't just punch him instead. After I caught him with my wife, the man's expression quickly changed from one of fear to one of rage, as if he were truly going to try to fight me in my own home. Can you fathom the sheer disdain and the audacity? He probably fed him stories about being single or separated, so I'm willing to wager he was unaware that Carolyn was married. He most likely believed that I was some sort of insane ex-boyfriend. I released him before the situation worsened, not because I was afraid, but because I immediately saw that this pitiful excuse of a man wasn't worth being charged with assault. It wasn't he who promised me anything. He didn't make a vow to love and care for me till the day we die. He was just another man who was unable to control himself. The true traitor was still in that bedroom, most likely considering how to deceive her way out of this situation. My entire body trembled as I turned back to Carolyn. The lady I had dedicated my entire life to for 6 years was there, fumbling with her bra as if it were a trivial annoyance. The purple orchids I had purchased were all over the floor, most likely crushed beneath the man's running feet. She said the mirror had better lighting, so I hung it up for her last Christmas, and I just stood there watching her get ready in it. She was also taking her sweet time, as if she hadn't just ruined our entire marriage. She was avoiding my gaze in the mirror, straightening her hair nonchalantly, and behaving as though she hadn't just ruined everything we had worked so hard to create. You want to know what this woman had the audacity to say to me after I literally caught her cheating? As if I were a door-to-door salesperson who had disturbed her day, she gave me this irritated look and asked, "Why are you even back?" Nada, I'm sorry. I can explain, or any of that nonsense about fundamental human decency. The fact that I came home early and caught her cheating, in our bed, in the house we bought together, the house where I paid the majority of the mortgage, actually annoyed her. Never in my life have I wanted to strike someone so much. In reality, my hand was twitching as I recalled how satisfying it was to slap her affair partner, but I just stood there, immobilized, while she had the audacity to mutter under her breath, "You weren't supposed to be back." As if I were to blame for her early return home or that I should have called ahead to arrange a convenient time to catch her cheating. This woman's sheer outrageousness, 6 years of marriage, and this is what it meant to her. A small hiccup in her fun-filled afternoon. Do you realize what's truly broken? While all of this was going on, I could see our wedding picture on the nightstand. The same bedside table where she had placed the breakfast I had prepared for her the previous weekend. She had been telling me she was too tired for sex in the same room for the previous 3 months. But she obviously had plenty of energy for this stranger. Like a fool, I stood there thinking about all the late nights at work she had told me about, all the girls' nights out, and all the times she had mentioned going to see her mother. What was the duration of this? How many men had shared my bed with me? Carolyn was by no means finished talking, so I was about to find out. Then this woman, this nasty jerk, went totally crazy. As though I had just blown apart our marriage, she began yelling at me. "You weren't expected to return," she screamed, her face turning red and splotchy, just like when we fought. "You are to blame for this. You wouldn't have seen this if you had simply informed me that you were returning home." This woman would have earned an Olympic gold medal for her mental gymnastics. She even had the audacity to accuse me of being the one who discovered her infidelity. "But hold on, things will improve. You declined my request for an open relationship," she screamed, as if it somehow justified her actions. Yes, 6 months prior, she had asked me once in a drunken chat, and I had declined since I was a monogamist. Apparently, that meant she should do it anyhow, in her deranged thinking. "I have necessities," She continued to rant, as if I were a monster for asking my wife to be obedient. She attempted to cheat on me *nicely*, which is really insane. I tried to do things without hurting you. How thoughtful of her. Something broke inside of me. 6 years of devotion, trust and love were reduced to I have needs. Every kiss, I love you, and moment we spent together were all phony. My palm trembling with anger, I took 3 steps across the room. I lifted my fist and grabbed her by the collar of the shirt I had purchased for her birthday last month. She injured me, and I wanted to hurt her too. Anything that matched the agony ripping through my chest was what I wanted her to feel. However, I couldn't do it after seeing the dread in her eyes, real, authentic fear, despite the fact that she had just shattered everything I held dear and had shown me that our entire marriage was a sham. That's not me. I'm not going to be that man. I vowed never to put that expression on anyone's face, and my mom used to stare at my dad with the same terror. So with my hands still clenched but lowered, I moved back and released a go of her shirt. To let her feel even a small portion of my suffering, the dark side of me still wishes I'd given in to that anger. Not because she didn't deserve it, but because I deserved better than to become what I've always feared. I'm glad I didn't. There I was, standing in my own bedroom, looking at this stranger in my wife's face while surrounded by crushed purple flowers. This was how our 6-year marriage ended, with her accusing me of being the one who discovered her infidelity. Standing there now was the woman who used to kiss me goodbye every morning, accusing me of failing to phone ahead to arrange for my discovery of her affair. This woman changed identities faster than a TV station the moment I released her top. She was suddenly no longer afraid. No, in all of this, she was now the victim. Really, you were going to hit me? As I turned to leave, she yelled at my back. This is the precise reason I no longer love you. You're not a man at all. She continued to speak, yelling every possible abuse as she followed me down the corridor. After 6 years of marriage, she was attempting to make me the antagonist in this tale. It was very convenient for her to go from shivering in terror to yelling abuse at the man she had just accused of hitting her. I didn't realize she wanted me to strike her until I spoke with my friend later that evening. Do you think that's possible? In order to transform herself from the unfaithful wife into the mistreated husband, she wanted me to lose my cool and give her something she could use against me. She most likely had it all figured out. She would cry about her violent husband, run to the police with a battered face, and take half of my belongings and my monthly alimony payments. I was being lured into domestic violence by the same woman who used to bring me soup when I was ill. In a weird way, the manipulation was almost impressive. I needed to leave that house. It practically smelled of treachery throughout the entire area. In our bedroom, on our linens, and in the air, their colognes and fragrances were blended together. The aroma of another guy had contaminated the same bed where I had comforted her during panic attacks. I took my keys and money and went for a drive. I found myself at my friend Mark's house. I'm grateful for Mark. After glancing at my face, he pulled out the whiskey. Mark understood precisely what I was getting into because he had already been divorced. He said it like it was. I had to get a lawyer as soon as possible. Here's the worst part though. Carolyn was working part-time at a boutique, essentially pretending to have a profession, while I was earning 6 figures. That meant I might have to pay this dishonest woman alimony in my state. Every month the same lady who had just slept with another man might deplete my finances. That's the weird thing about the legal system, even if you are the one who is cheated on, you still have to pay for it. However, Mark, being the astute jerk that he is, pointed out that adultery might alter the alimony figures. Keep a record of everything, he advised. Every email, text message, and receipt. Anything that would show she was cheating on you. In this program, there is finally some good news. Perhaps I won't have to pay for her affair partner's dates after all. My mind was still racing. I had been a contented husband and father organizing a surprise for my wife just that morning. I was now sitting in my friend's living room, searching for divorce attorneys on Google while attempting to keep my stomach from turning up whenever I thought about what I had just entered. I had no intention of attempting to mend our relationship in any way. I could be foolish enough to purchase pricey flowers for a wife who cheats, but I'm not foolish enough to overlook it. My phone started exploding when I was sitting at Mark's apartment, trying to take it all in. Carolyn allegedly made the decision to try to tear me down via text messaging because she couldn't control me in person. And holy, the things this woman sent me are unbelievable. Just last week, this woman texted me "I love you," with adorable little heart emojis. She was now providing me in-depth analyses that contrasted her affair partner's manhood with mine. In fact, she took the effort to explicitly describe in writing how much more effective he was in bed than I was. How I could never please her the way he could. How she had spent years pretending to be with me. Like she was writing a Yelp review for a lousy restaurant. She gave me an entire stinking novel detailing all of my sexual shortcomings, along with performance assessments and size measurements. After I caught her cheating in our own bed, she even had the audacity to tell me that her boyfriend had ruined her for other men, as if I would want her back. The best thing though. She was furious that I had destroyed her good thing. Do you think that's possible? As if I should have given them solitude or something, she was upset with me for interfering with her affair. She accused me of being selfish since I had ruined her chance at true happiness by returning home early without telling her. This woman was performing mental acrobatics that would have pleased Olympic judges. I'm glad Mark was there because he told me right away to take screenshots of everything. He kept shouting, "Document, document, document." And he was absolutely correct. I saw those tiny message bubbles begin to go away, one by one, not even a minute after she had finished her big tirade about her fantastic affair partner and my alleged flaws. I suppose she finally understood that when your husband earns 3 times as much as you do and a divorce is imminent, it might not be the best idea to write down your admission of infidelity. She resorted to using the same old slurs after erasing all the proof of her affair. She called me all the names in the book, but she made sure to keep her afternoon actions out of the conversation. The speed at which she shifted from boasting about her affair to acting as though it never happened was actually rather astounding. It was like witnessing someone attempt to remove evidence from a murder scene as those texts vanished in real time. Unfortunately, she was unaware that I had screenshots of every single item. She may have erased the texts, but she was unable to erase the truth or the images of them that were now securely saved in the camera roll of my phone, ready to prove to a divorce judge why I shouldn't be required to pay this lady any alimony at all. That evening, Mark proved to be a wealth of information regarding divorce. He guided me through every step I needed to take, from gathering proof to protecting my financial accounts, in between shots of whiskey. That night, I hardly slept at all, just mentally reliving everything while I browsed through my phone's evaluations of divorce attorneys. The 2 weeks that followed were a haze of meetings with various lawyers. Some appeared to have barely passed the legal exam, while others sought retainers that were more expensive than my automobile. Finally, I came across Lucas, who didn't need me to sell a kidney to pay him and who seemed to genuinely care about my issue. Lucas really grinned when I showed him the screenshots of Carolyn's texting tantrum and the photos of the condition of our bedroom. Although he was pragmatic, he acknowledged that we had a strong case to reduce or possibly do away with alimony. He cautioned me that regardless of the reason for the dissolution of the marriage, judges in our state have a tendency to favor the lower-earning spouse. Nevertheless, he pledged to fight for me until the death. To be honest, the first positive development since this horror began was simply having someone knowledgeable and supportive in my corner. Serving Carolyn with divorce papers was the exciting part that followed. Are you curious about what this woman did? For 3 weeks, she avoided the server by altering her schedule, acting as though she wasn't home, and even having her mother inform the server that she had relocated to Florida. She had likely not exercised honestly for months when the server finally caught her leaving a yoga session. She took the entire 30 days permitted by law to reply, even at that point. A move of pure hatred. She was aware that I was paying Lucas by the hour, so she knew precisely what she was doing, dragging everything out as long as possible. And Carolyn became the queen of petty once the proceedings really got underway. She claimed she couldn't locate bank statements that I knew she had, forgot to bring necessary paperwork to meetings, was late for every appointment and insisted on thorough inventory of every item in the house, down to the last spoon. These absurd settlement offers kept coming in from her lawyer. In addition to wanting my 401k in the house, she also wanted alimony. This woman, whom I found cheating on, asked for half of my retirement funds, which was really outrageous. The most annoying aspect? She was still seeing her affair partner, and we had been apart for months by this time. Yes, mutual friends told me about that. She is trying to make my life as unpleasant as possible while living her best life. She would abruptly alter her mind or make new demands whenever we were on the verge of reaching an agreement. She seemed to take sick joy in seeing me squander money on legal bills. I could almost hear her giggling all the way to her boyfriend's bedroom whenever Lucas had to answer one of her absurd proposals. I attempted to re-enter the dating scene while Carolyn was working tirelessly to prolong the divorce and deplete my finances. I went through a phase of hooking up with random women from dating apps, which isn't my proudest moment. Downloaded Bumble, Tinder, and other apps. I tried to persuade myself that this was what it meant to move on by having a few one-night stands. However, each subsequent morning felt worse than the one before. Every pointless hookup served as a reminder to me of why I had declined Carolyn's proposal of an open relationship. That way of life simply wasn't for me. I've always been the kind of guy who wants to have a genuine connection, exchange inside jokes, and wake up next to the same person every morning. I felt empty inside from the whole casual sex situation, as if I were attempting to fill a hole with the wrong form. Other than job, divorce paperwork and failed hookups, I needed something to keep my mind busy. I used to read a lot, like stay up all night to complete a book, until Carolyn came along and life became hectic with 60-hour work weeks and monthly shouting bouts. I therefore chose to go to this small independent bookstore downtown one Saturday rather than browsing through dating apps or monitoring the emails of my lawyer. Cats napping in the windows, creaking wooden floorboards, and that wonderful old book smell, you know the kind. I felt totally disoriented as I stood in the sci-fi area because, obviously, the entire genre had changed while I was occupied with preserving my marriage. I'm referring to these big novels, series that were maybe 15 books long, and titles that I couldn't even pronounce. This woman next to me actually laughed. Not in a nasty way, just this gentle, delighted sound, which must have made me appear very pitiful, just staring at the shelves with this perplexed expression on my face. When I turned to face her, she simply smiled and asked if I needed assistance while holding this enormous book that might have been used as a weapon. I told her that I didn't know where to begin, but I was searching for some decent science fiction. The next thing I knew, she was teaching me the basics of contemporary science fiction while we sat in these comfortable seats in the corner. She was also quite enthusiastic about it. When she talked about her favorite novels, her eyes glowed, and she had the cute habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she was thrilled about a series. A brief book recommendation evolved into a 2-hour discussion covering everything from contemporary space operas to classic Asimov. I told her about my old college faves, and she told me about a parallel universe series she enjoyed. For the first time in months I had a meaningful conversation free of attorneys, divorce documents, and awkward Tinder pickup lines. I forgot all about Carolyn and the turmoil for those 2 hours. I was just a man discussing books with a stunning woman who genuinely seemed to be listening. I eventually plucked up the confidence to ask for her number after our spontaneous book club meeting. Something about her made me feel like a youngster again. Even though my hands were shaking as I put it in my phone. Pretty pitiful for a 36-year-old man. With her number, her recommendation for the 3 body problem and the first sincere smile I'd felt in months, I left that bookstore. It struck me how different our text exchange that evening seemed from all those pointless Tinder texts as I continued reading it again. Something genuine was there. I knew I had to disclose my ongoing divorce to her on our first actual date. I had mentally practiced this exchange a dozen times, anticipating her to flee when I brought up my insane soon-to-be ex-wife. However, Emma, yes, that is her name, simply took a drink of her wine and replied, "Thank you for being honest. At least you are addressing your baggage, which we all have." As simple as that. No criticism, strange glances, or awkward attempts to divert the conversation. She also made the joke that she wouldn't have to question whether a man she was dating was secretly married if he was going through a divorce. Emma was just the opposite of Carolyn. Emma would explain things gently during conflicts, while Carolyn would yell. Emma freely gave Carolyn the attention she demanded. She showed genuine interest in my work, recalled little details about topics I had brought up weeks prior, and never once made me feel guilty about going through a divorce. I felt heard and seen for the first time in years. The finest aspect. When we first met, I wasn't even trying to find her. In a bookstore, 2 people connected over science fiction without the use of dating apps or friend hookups. This stuff cannot be made up. After 5 months of dating Emma, I was completely smitten. She made me feel comfortable in every way, including sending me book recommendations while I was at work, leaving little notes in the books she lent me, and paying attention when I shared my day. However, Carolyn continued to put up obstacle after obstacle in the divorce process. She would always come up with a new way to drag things out whenever I thought we were almost done. Missing signatures, contested assets, suddenly remembered joint accounts. You name it, she tried everything. Emma was quite patient during this entire ordeal. She never complained about being with a technically married man or put pressure on me regarding the divorce. She would simply support me during the annoying phone conversations with Lucas and reassure me that this would also pass. I was at last beginning to feel content once more, not content to merely act that way. Naturally, everything went totally haywire at that same moment. I had just spent a wonderful Saturday with Emma. After shopping and eating lunch at this adorable tiny cafe, we were returning to her car in the mall parking lot. We were discussing what movie to watch that evening as the sun was going down. I'm listening to her giggle about something one moment and then everything in my life erupts into pandemonium. This engine screamed like if someone had stepped on the throttle pedal and I heard it before I saw it. As I turned to face the sound, I saw that this car was speeding directly at us, primarily toward Emma. I grabbed her arm out of pure impulse to pull her away, but I wasn't quick enough. Her leg was clipped by the automobile, and I watched in horror as it simply broke. I will never be able to forget the sound of her bone cracking and her scream. I tried to protect her body with mine as I slid down with her when she fell onto the pavement. I was about to dial 911 when I heard the tires squealing once more. The car's engine was still roaring as it backed up after colliding with another car. It dawned on me then that this was no accident. This driver was attempting to strike us once more. Emma's leg was bent at this terrible angle and she was crying in agony. I knew that if I didn't move her, we would both die. With my pulse racing so fiercely I felt it could burst, I grabbed her by the arms and pulled her between two parked cars. Every time she moved, she cried out in agony, but I had to continue. The car slammed into the cars we were hiding between as it charged forward once more. Every auto alarm in the area was activated by the crash's extreme violence. At this moment, people were yelling and racing toward us from all directions with their phones out. The entire parking lot was in disarray, with people shouting, car alarms going off, and Emma sobbing beside me. I swear to God that time stopped as the driver's door opened. Carolyn was there, getting out of the car as if she were going to a dinner party. She appeared just like she had when I last saw her at our lawyer's office, but now she had a crazy expression in her eyes that I had never seen before. With her hair styled flawlessly as usual and wearing the same blazer she used to wear to work, she appeared as though she hadn't just attempted to kill two people in broad daylight. It was made much more horrifying by the stark contrast between her normal appearance and what she had just done. This was my soon-to-be ex-wife, who had reportedly been monitoring us and decided that if she couldn't have me, she'd rather see me dead. This wasn't just some drunk driver or random road rage incident. She intentionally targeted Emma, who had never done anything but make me happy again, in her attempt to kill me. Something shattered inside of me when I heard Emma's whimpers of anguish and looked at her fractured leg. She had recently attempted to murder an innocent lady whose only crime was dating her soon-to-be ex-husband. So this was no longer just about Carolyn and me. Fearful that Carolyn might have a weapon or try to complete what she started, I kept one eye on her while holding Emma close to keep her calm. It was like watching someone change into a monster in front of me when Carolyn got out of that car. I hadn't been married to this woman for 6 years. Even the woman I had caught cheating in our bed wasn't this one. This was something very different, a furious being posing as my ex-wife. I was hit hard by the reality of what had just transpired. In fact, Carolyn had made a deliberate, planned attempt to kill us, not in a moment of rage. She must have followed us, waited for the perfect opportunity, and then made a conscious attempt to run us down in the middle of the day. I honestly believed she was going to try to complete what the car hadn't been able to achieve when she began to approach us, her heels clicking on the pavement like some kind of twisted countdown. Except for her eyes, which were blazing with a fierce hatred I had never witnessed, not even during our most heated arguments, her face was utterly blank. Thankfully, she was seized by a man who looked like a linebacker before she could get to us. Like some furious animal straining against a leash, she continued to try to push forward even after that. While I was attempting to calm Emma and examine her wounds, I couldn't take my eyes off Carolyn. This lady had slept next to me for 6 years, sat across from me at innumerable dinners, and discussed starting a family with me. Now she was here, having just attempted to kill my girlfriend and me in a mall parking lot. My head was spinning from the difference between those two versions of her. When someone you once loved enough to marry tries to kill you, how do you handle it? An ambulance arrived after the police, who were siren blaring. Emma was in excruciating pain as they loaded her into it, but she made an effort to grin at me to reassure me that she was all right. While the officers were handcuffing her, Carolyn lost all mental faculties. "It's only been a year, and you're already walking around with that asterisk, she screamed at the top of her lungs. Everyone around us recoiled at the sheer vitriol in her voice. In front of dozens of witnesses, she had just tried murder, and in her deranged mind, she somehow was the victim. That's when I realized how completely insane it all was. I genuinely walked in on this woman cheating on me in our bed with a male stranger. She was the one who violated our marriage vows, accused me of being the one who caught her, and, out of spite, prolonged our divorce. She is currently being detained for attempted murder while yelling about betrayal. Olympic-level mental gymnastics were displayed. She was acting as though I was the terrible guy for moving on after she ruined our marriage by infidelity. I felt as though I was in a distorted parallel universe as I stood there in that crowded parking lot, witnessing my ex-wife being crammed into the back of a police car while still yelling profanities and having my girlfriend's blood on my hands from where I attempted to assist her. My wife, who used to make me breakfast on Sundays and send me adorable texts while I was at work, recently attempted to kill 2 people in cold blood. What's the most absurd aspect? She really seemed to think she had a right to do it, as though I was the bad guy in this tale because I caught her cheating. I kept expecting Emma to tell me it was over every time I went to see her in the hospital. Who could blame her after all? His insane soon-to-be ex-wife wants to use her as a hood ornament 5 months after they started dating. Most individuals don't sign up for that kind of baggage. Because she had the misfortune of dating me, she had to endure months of physical treatment and had her leg in this enormous cast. When I informed her who the driver was, I was unable to look her in the eye. Instead, I just gazed at the hospital floor, waiting for the inevitable, "I can't do this anymore" reaction. "Well, at least we know she'll have plenty of time to work on her road rage in prison," Emma replied, just reaching for my hand. In fact, she joked about it. This woman was attempting to comfort me while she lay in a hospital bed with pins in her leg due to my ex-wife's attempted murder. She gave me a weird look when I asked her if she was certain she wanted to stay with me after everything. "Do you really believe that I will allow her to win? I'm going to walk again absolutely fine, and she's going to prison. I think I'm going to win this one." The office of the district attorney was obsessed with this case. It turns out that the entire event was captured in stunning high definition by many security cameras. The video was terrifying. Carolyn's automobile was the first to circle the parking lot, resembling a shark searching for food. She then parked and watched us for a bit. This, according to the DA, was important because it demonstrated premeditation. She didn't simply chance to see us and lose it. Instead, she tracked us, waited for the right opportunity, and made a conscious attempt to kill Emma. Before she shot it directly at us, they had video of her passing by our area at least 3 times. The security footage resembled a scene from a horror film. You could see how she waited until we were in the ideal position and then simply floored it as soon as she saw us. The first blow that shattered Emma's leg, Carolyn backing up for another attempt, and me pulling Emma between the cars were all captured on camera. According to the DA, it was one of the most obvious attempted murder cases she had ever seen. There is no place for justifications of heat of passion or transitory insanity. This was a cold-blooded, well-planned attempted murder that was captured on many cameras from various perspectives. The most bizarre aspect: before attempting to kill us, she can be seen on the video inspecting her makeup in the rear-view mirror. She is not trying to commit double homicide. Rather, she is merely adjusting her lipstick as if she were going to a business meeting. This, according to the prosecutor, was another nail in her coffin because it demonstrated that she was fully conscious of and in charge of her actions. She wasn't a woman who lost her temper out of jealousy. Rather, she meticulously prepared to kill her ex-husband's new lover and meticulously applied cosmetics for her subsequent mugshot. Because, evidently, plotting to kill your ex's new girlfriend is more important than dividing up the china collection, the entire divorce process was put on hold. For months, I alternated between the courthouse, the hospital where Emma was recovering, and my job. Initially, my supervisor was kind, but I could tell his patience was running thin after I had to leave work for legal reasons 10 times. My ex-wife couldn't tolerate the fact that I moved on after she cheated, so I was living in the courthouse, burning through PTO like crazy, and spending hours with prosecutors. The trial itself was akin to witnessing a master lesson in the art of incarceration. Prosecutors have an ever-increasing mound of evidence. First, there were the security cameras, which showed Carolyn attempting to assassinate Emma from 6 distinct perspectives. The parade of witnesses followed, and it appeared like everyone in the parking lot had stayed to testify. This wasn't an accident, according to the stories of the soccer mom who witnessed the entire incident while carrying groceries, the teenager who captured it all on his phone, and the retired police officer who seized Carolyn before she could complete her task. This was an open-air murder attempt. Even though Emma's leg was still in a cast, she looked amazing on the stand. Without crying, she recounted her experience of seeing the automobile approaching, the agony of her leg breaking, and the fear of knowing Carolyn was returning for another attempt. I also had to testify, telling the jury about the threatening texts, the divorce drama, and how I discovered Carolyn cheating. Carolyn sat there the entire time, wiping tissues at her eyes and attempting to look regretful. The jurors saw through it all. The verdict found it guilty on all counts, including reckless endangerment, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and attempted murder. However, things became frustrating when the 12-year sentence was announced. She only has that. She was sentenced to 12 years for premeditated attempted murder, but if she behaved well, she may be released much sooner. Her entire, "I'm so sorry, I wasn't thinking clearly," charade was bought off by the judge. She sobbed as she described how she lost control and deeply regretted her actions. As I sit there, I consider how she looked at her makeup before attempting to murder us. I was given the following explanation by the prosecutors. First-time offender, no past record, expressed regret, etc. But really, 12 years? She made a cold-blooded attempt to kill 2 people. She planned it, tracked us, and if the bystander hadn't stopped her, she would have tried a 3rd time. Emma might have passed away. I might have perished. Additionally, if Carolyn behaves well in prison, she might be released in less than 10 years. You can try to kill someone in front of dozens of witnesses and still receive a shorter sentence than a man caught using drugs, which is only one of the peculiarities of the legal system. What really grabbed me though? Carolyn actually had the audacity to turn to us during the sentencing process and apologize, stating that she wasn't herself that day, as if there were ever a time when it was acceptable to try to kill people in a parking lot. Emma refused to give her the satisfaction of an answer, instead just staring her down the entire time. Even though 12 years wasn't what we had hoped for, it was at least 12 years without having to peer over our shoulder in parking lots. It's funny how a judge's viewpoint on alimony can be significantly altered by a murder attempt. Following the criminal trial, the divorce process abruptly became quite straightforward. Carolyn, who looked amazing in her orange jumpsuit, had to attend via video link from prison. The judge quickly put an end to her lawyer's attempt to fight for part of my assets. It turns out that judges don't feel too sorry for spouses who attempt to kill their former partner's new companions. The court isn't in the business of rewarding attempted murderers with alimony, the judge actually stated, and I quote this. She received exactly everything she had before the marriage, her personal belongings, her clothing, and her jail commissary account. Her lawyer's expression was priceless as the judge turned down each and every one of their demands. No claim to the house, no alimony, no portion of my 401k, nothing. She ultimately played herself after spending months dragging out the divorce, making absurd requests, and postponing appointments. She may have gotten anything in the divorce if she hadn't tried to make Emma a speed bump. Rather, she received divorce papers that essentially stated, "You get nothing," and a prison cell. However, I was unable to remain in that flat. Too many memories of that guy walking in on her. They were always there when I walked through the bedroom door. Emma and I discovered this fantastic location nearer to the city center. In fact, it's far nicer than my last apartment, has a great view of the city and, most importantly, the bedroom isn't haunted by the ghost of my cheating ex-wife. Emma is now completely recovered. It's hardly noticeable that her leg was ever fractured. She quips that since it permanently got rid of my psychotic ex, getting struck by a car was completely worth it. Dark humor, but whatever gets you through nearly getting killed is better, isn't it? I occasionally question whether I could have prevented all of this. Perhaps when she began picking fights over nothing, I should have recognized the warning signs. When she declined to continue couples therapy, perhaps I should have fled. To be honest though, insanity doesn't always raise a giant red signal. Sometimes it goes unnoticed until it tries to kill your lover in a parking lot. I can say I'm truly happy now, at least. Since we met through science fiction books and are currently living our own wild story with a happy conclusion, Emma and I are discussing getting married next spring. Carolyn will undoubtedly go eventually, but that is the purpose of restraining orders. In addition, Emma's father, who teaches firearms, ensured that we both obtained concealed carry licenses in case Carolyn decided to attempt for a second round after she leaves. Document everything, be on your watch, and maybe stay away from mall parking lots if you're going through a divorce or have strange ex-partners. Additionally, if you're seeing someone new after a divorce, you might want to investigate their background first, or at the very least, make sure they're not the kind of person who would try to kill someone over a split. Reddit, I appreciate you reading my bizarre tale. I'm interested in reading all of your comments, particularly the ones about cars. I guess your ex-wife really drove that relationship into the ground, is Emma's personal favorite. Oh, and I still go to the bookshop with Emma. No, we no longer park in that shopping center.